his lap, cigarettes curling, smoking his political trap. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. He's a Republican dragon with his truthful slight, fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance, Fluffy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, the political dragon here in our offices in the Bronx, New York. I'm Michael Vass, and I thank you for joining us today. It is August 16th, currently 2:32 in the afternoon. We are right on time on the program. I thank each and every one of you for taking some time to join us today. We're going to have a good show. I know it's the middle of the summer. A lot of people are starting to take their summer vacations. August is known for everyone traveling, Americans, going out and traveling before the Labor Day holiday. And then, of course, we go directly into the election cycle. By that, I mean the average American actually starts to pay attention to the candidates that are available for November, the 2026 midterm election, and they'll start making up their mind based on the commercials that they will see on TV and how much money the candidate spends to tell them that they are a great person, which isn't necessarily true. In fact, it's almost never true, but it is what they say to get the votes. So we're going to talk a little about what's happening right now that's pretty much outside a lot of attention here in America because most people are taking vacations. But the season, the election season, is heating up, and a lot of things are starting to come together that will affect you, that are going to affect the way you live your life as an American citizen. And obviously, that means how America is going to be impacting and dealing with every other country in the world. It's a big deal. And the more we are prepared today, the more that our future will be better. That's the way I tend to look at it. I think you may agree on in total. You'll tell me throughout the show. I do look forward to hearing everyone's comments. Throughout the show, we will be going back and forth to any comments that you guys may have on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, YouTube, of course. You can do super chats. You can do Rumble rants. They are appreciated. And of course, as they come out, I'll get with them. If you do a super chat or a Rumble rant, I will get to that much faster and address any question that you guys may have. Doesn't matter what topic. Doesn't matter if it's what I'm talking about. I will address, because this is a conversation between you and me on the issues that are going on. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think I've missed something, I'm happy to hear your voice on anything, as long as it's respectful, of course. So one other thing I should mention before we get into the show today is very simply, obviously we support the First Amendment and we do support your right to speak out, But we do also, or rather, I also do some other programs. And I do a taping. I have a program, the Radically Conservative Show, which appears on the Bronx Community TV. We tape at Lehman College, and sometimes we have an audience. People can come and watch as we tape the show. This Tuesday, we will be doing another radically conservative program, taping at the BronxNet studios in Lehman College this Tuesday. If you are interested, if you're in New York, in the Bronx, and you will be available around 5 o'clock on Tuesday, then let me know and you can come and be part of our live audience for the taping of one of those programs. Normally, about 2 weeks after we tape the program, that's when the embargo lifts and we're able to present it to you on the channel. You can see it under our community TV listing category on the YouTube website, and you'll be able to see all of our community TV appearances and the programs that I am the lead host in. So just something to let people know. You may want to drop on in. Please do. I appreciate it. And it would be fun to have some of my audience join us there. Maybe even have dinner afterwards. Depends on how many people show up. So I know everyone's getting ready for football. And I know that always has an impact on the show, but we do not back down. We always go forward. Yes, if you're wondering, do I seem a little bit tired? Yes, I am. My dog, Khan, who's 15 and a half years old now, he went through an entire night. I don't know what he ate. I don't know what happened, but he was throwing up every hour and a half throughout the entire night. Tomorrow morning, in fact, I will be taking him over to the vet to see if he seems better, but just to check him out. So definitely, super chats, rumble rants do help, because I got to take him to the vet tomorrow morning, find out why was he up all night throwing up, and I got no sleep. So if I seem a little tired, if I seem to have bags under my eyes, that's the reason why. Fair enough. I've caught you guys up on everything about me, and I know you probably don't care, but that's okay. Love my dog, doesn't matter about me. But let me go into what we're talking about today. And I know I was running late, so I didn't get to do a description. I didn't have a great title for the show. I'll fix that afterwards when I put in all the links after the show. But I wanted to talk about what's happening in the Middle East. Obviously, this is a big deal. It's something that's continuing to go on. There it is. And we're not done with this conflict. Obviously, the conflict is continuing to go on. Iran has a problem. So the big problem with the Middle East in dealing with Iran at this moment is, one, there are two different factions that the United States is trying to negotiate with. There is the IRGC, the fanatical terrorist wing of the Iranian government that trains individuals throughout the world to blow themselves up and kill women and children. They're terrorists. That's the IRGC. And they are trying to continue to fight against America, whom they see as the great devil, and they're not willing to give up. They are willing to die fighting because they believe they'll get 72 virgins and go to heaven and they'll be praised because they're psychopaths. But there's also the Iranian government that is recognized. That would be under the Ayatollah and the mullahs. And the conflict there is, by many estimates across the international credible news media, there is the belief that the latest Ayatollah, the third Ayatollah, is gay. Normally, in Iran, that means a death sentence. That means you get thrown off the top of a building to see if you'll fly, and no one has. But he is the religious supreme leader of the government of Iran. The IRGC don't respect that, and they're having great difficulty, and so they're pushing back against the Ayatollah as he is negotiating with the great devil, which is the United States. Not Donald Trump, the United States. This has got very little to do with Donald Trump. This is an issue that's been going on for 47 years. And every president has basically kicked the can down the road and tried not to deal with this and just allowed it to continue to snowball and get bigger and bigger until now with the Trump administration, where we have directly done more than just sanctions, but actually step in. That conflict has difficulty. Now, a lot of the mainstream news media want to focus on currently the fact that we're switching aircraft carriers. The current USS Abraham Lincoln is an aircraft carrier that has been on service in rotation for about 230 days, which may sound extreme. It's not really. But it sounds extreme for what most Americans today would consider normal, especially outside of a active war zone. That would seem a bit extreme. During a war, not so much. And in high conflict times, not as much. But we're switching them out with a different aircraft carrier, which will have more supplies, newer troops, fresher troops that will be able to go in and continue the mission that was started by the USS Abraham under Donald Trump's direction. News media is trying to make it sound like it's a really terrible, horrible situation right now. I don't think it is. Having served in the Marine Corps, having many friends who have served in the Marine Corps, Army, and Navy, and some family members as well, this isn't the worst thing that could be happening for them in terms of an active engagement where missiles and drones are flying and things are getting blown up. It's not the worst thing to be on an aircraft carrier at this moment and just have an extended duty rotation. It's not the worst. It really, really isn't. But that being said, it is getting a lot of news because Democrats are desperate to find something to attach to Donald Trump, Republicans, and MAGA so that they can have an advantage in the 2026 midterm elections. At the end of the day, at this moment, the entire news cycle is trying to find some negativity in America, and in particular in our government operations, that they can attach to Donald Trump and therefore all Republicans to make them, to demonize them, and to try and convince the general public as they start paying attention to the 2026 midterm elections, that they will say, vote blue no matter who, even if it's a socialist, even if the policies are something that you would oppose normally. Well, Donald Trump's worse, orange man bad, vote blue. That's, at the end of the day, almost every policy, almost everything in the news in the next 2 months will be focused on the orange man bad, therefore vote blue. That's what we're going to see. And that is what we are seeing in much of the coverage right now. But how does that affect Iran? Well, the United States has made, and I do not agree with the Memorandum of Understanding. I publicly was on this program and several others, and I said, I do not appreciate or like the Memorandum of Understanding. It was far too beneficial to Iran and not to the United States at all, really. And I do not agree with that negotiation. But we are continuing to negotiate, but we're only talking, apparently, to the official recognized government of Iran and not the IRGC. There's a civil war going on there. We need to talk to both sides, because while as much as the Ayatollah may be saying, no, we'll talk, we'll negotiate, they want to accept the Memorandum of Understanding because they recognize it is supremely in the benefit of Iran to accept that deal. The IRGC doesn't want to make a deal with whom they consider the devil. They would rather fight and die to the end, to the bitter end, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are complications to this. One of the complications is that the IRGC has continued to say, well, America must admit defeat, which America hasn't been defeated. America destroyed the Iranian Navy. America has destroyed the Iranian Air Force. We have virtually wiped out the drones and the missiles of Iran, extremely low levels. We've removed almost all of their stockpiles such that they stopped sending drones and missiles to Russia to fight against Ukraine, which is good for international stability. It's good for reducing that conflict and moving it closer to an end of that conflict and bring more stability towards Europe's doorstep. So we've hit several things that are successes. We've had several areas where we've had success. But the United States is still having to deal with the IRGC. And the IRGC have demanded that Iran owns the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I don't think that's really a good thing. I don't think that's going to be very effective. And more importantly, it's unacceptable. People often wonder, well, why can't Iran take control of the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, there's Panama and the Panama Canal. And the United States used to own that, and now Panama owns it. And you do have to pay money to go through the Panama Canal. If you've been on this program before, you've heard me talk about it. And the difference is the Panama Canal is completely artificial. That's man-made. That is a shortcut to cross from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean that was not created by nature. That was created by man. Give me 1 second, folks. Can you turn on the fan for me? Okay. Well, it's in the can, the round one, round container. It's okay. So, folks, sorry, I was talking about my dog for a second, who's now in the room with me, and he feels all right. Good boy, Con. So, talking about Iran. Iran wants to own. So, it's not like the Strait of Hormuz. The Panama Canal, in that it is artificial. You have an option. You can go around South America. It takes longer. It may cost more money, but you can avoid paying for the Panama Canal, and you can have that option. So it's the oceans, the waterways are open, and it has been the norm throughout the entire world, historical norm going back 1,500 years, that waterways like the Strait of Hormuz, they're open to the public. They're honestly international. No one truly owns them. But on top of that, Iran doesn't own them. See, on one side, you have Iran. On the other, you have Oman and the United Arab Emirates, which is the UAE. They have on their borders, they have half of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has the other half. So yes, it is theoretically quite possible that you can technically go up and down the Strait of Hormuz, which is about 24 miles wide. You could only travel on the side of Oman and the United Arab Emirates and avoid Iran's territorial waters altogether if you wanted to. So neither side has ever claimed sole control of that, because that would start a war, and it is unnatural in terms of borders amongst nations. And no one has ever charged for going through there because it's considered an open, a natural waterway. Iran is trying to make money because Iran wants to build weapons. They have to rebuild their missiles, their drones. Money is needed by the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. These are direct puppet terrorist organizations controlled by Iran, and they normally receive about $100 million a year from Iran to buy drones and missiles, guns and bombs to kill moms and kids throughout the world. So we need to stop that. Now, according to the most recent statement, Donald Trump has made several very aggressive statements, as do most leaders during a time of conflict, of war, of any kind of international engagement. Some of the things the world leaders will say is quite bombastic and even to an extent, uh, well, you could say deplorable, I suppose, objectionable at the very least. It's harsh. Then again, so is war. The whole point of many of the negotiations are saber rattling. We have the power to destroy you. Agree, go and negotiate in good faith, or we will wipe you off the face of the earth. This is not something that's unusual for nations that are in conflict and war to say to each other. But a lot of people are very sensitive because, well, Donald Trump is a bad guy, so therefore it's all right. Not like the Ayatollah or the IRGC. They're not good guys either. In fact, objectively, they're far worse. Again, Donald Trump doesn't blow up moms and daughters as much as the DSA may want you to feel like that. The United States doesn't blow up moms and kids just because. The IRGC, Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, they do. There is a clear and massive difference between the two. That's just a fact. Now, most recently, in an effort to try and move forward with the peace negotiations and to gain some leverage, because again, those negotiations are not, the memorandum of understanding, not very good. Donald Trump has said, well, maybe the United States will take control and own the Strait of Hormuz, that we will make that our territorial waters. And I know some people have had confusion about that. What does that mean? It would be the same thing as the East River here in New York, or the Mississippi River, or any other river in America. It would be property of the United States. The United States would have total control on who enters the waterway and who goes out, what business gets to go back and forth, what people get to go back and forth, whether or not any charges, any fees are to be made. If there's a gateway or a transit fee, well, that would have to be paid to the United States, not to Iran, not to Oman, not to the United Arab Emirates, but the United States itself. I do not take that serious. And as you can see, Iran has said, well, that's just not going to happen because America has lost, and America must admit they have lost, and America must pay Iran reparations for having lost. And as wars go, the losers pay the winners. Just think of World War I, World War II. Losers pay the winners. That's part of when you're in a war, and whether you win or you lose. But again, that's objectively, the United States hasn't lost. We won militarily. Absolutely. We dominate. And there is nothing in the universe that makes anyone think that the United States in any way, shape, or form has lost militarily. We have not. In terms of what we control the Strait of Hormuz overwhelmingly. Yes, it is more difficult and not as many ships can go through, but we do have ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz even now. We do have control of it. For the United States to claim it as its own, I don't see that as, I think that's bluster from the President of the United States. It is meant to embarrass Iran and to deflate and to mitigate Iran's claim that they own it all. That Iran is trying to say Oman doesn't count, the United Arab Emirates, the international border, dividing line of the waterway doesn't count. I don't think that's true. I think, well, I know for a fact that's legally not true, and effectively it's not true. But I don't think the United States can lay claim. If we did, we would have problems, and we'd be eventually in constant battles with Oman, the United Arab Emirates, several other nations, possibly Saudi Arabia, and of course Iran, constantly trying to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. It would be a never-ending battle. We would have military ships, the United States Navy, consistently stationed on both ends of the Strait of Hormuz, with American military in danger eternally, always under threat of attack by any and all terrorist organizations in the Middle East. That's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable. truly believe, because it is unacceptable, it's a risk that the United States, I don't think, is willing. I think we are capable. Do we have a Navy that would be able to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz? Absolutely. Do we have an Air Force that is capable of helping us to maintain consistent control over the entire Strait of Hormuz? Absolutely. Deploying that and using that internally in terms of cost and in terms of logistics, very expensive, very difficult. It is something that the United States absolutely can do. Politically, not possible. The American people have enough problems with the United States having bases all around the world, whether it be in Okinawa or whether it be in Ramstein in Germany or all across the world. We have bases, and many Democrats, many non-interventionists want to close all the foreign bases and leave America at more risk. And that's the constant battle. You know, America shouldn't be the cop of the world. America shouldn't have bases all around the world. Why are we paying for all that? And that's a very short-sighted way of looking at it, not understanding that we are the superpower of the world, and it is in the best interest of the United States to be able to strategically launch, to threaten to launch military operations from anywhere in the world, because we have so many bases across the world that our enemies would never be able to really put pressure on the United States militarily. They'd never be able to make it to mainland America without having to already encounter resistance from our various bases all around the world. And I think that's kind of important. So I do think what Donald Trump is saying here is bluster, and he is trying to counter the bluster from Iran. The problem is the American news media, in particular places like NBC, are on the side of Hamas, the IRGC. They're on the side of the terrorists and the foreigners, because they want Donald Trump to lose. They want Republicans to lose. They want Democrats to win. Again, this is all about the election. This isn't about fighting Iran. It's about who wins the election, who's going to control the House, who's going to control the Senate. That's what this is really about. And I think it's very important to understand, because the mainstream media doesn't want to word it that way, but I think it's very important to understand it that way. We have seen for 12 years, the news media has said nothing positive, overwhelming, the overall news media. They have, 90% of every single news story every day is something negative about Donald Trump and the Trump administration, and therefore Republicans and MAGA. For 12 years in a row, there's an entire generation that has grown up and has never heard a positive statement about our president and or an entire one of the two major parties of America. They've grown up where every day in the news, well, they're demonized. They're just bad people because they don't have the same ideology as the left. That's a problem. That is more problematic than anything else. But that's the way, maybe it's just the way that I see it. I don't know. By the way, let me take some comments here, because I wanted to share that with you guys to give, again, some of you have heard this before, but there are new people who watch the program too. Thank you. If you're new, thank you for joining us. They've never heard anyone talk about it in this way. And I think that's kind of important that we do. So let me go to the comments here. Actually, let me start with Phil. He has a super chat. He actually has two super chats. Thank you, Phil. First super chat, $2. He says, this seems like how Rome conquered Greece. To an extent, that's not a bad analogy. It's the change of empires. It was the change of superpowers of the world at that time in the ancient days. It was similar to that, but Iran is never going to take over the United States. That's just not going to happen. They're not ideologically taking over the United States. Even for those who are worried about Islam, Islam is not, or at least at this moment, is not taking over as the major religion of the United States. There's a lot of pushback there. And we'll get into that as we talk about Abdul El Sayed a little bit later in the program. And how the Democratic Socialists of America, their ideology, plus the ideology of fanatical Muslims in America, how that's affecting the 2026 election. We'll get into that. But thank you for bringing that up. Phil goes on to say with another $2 super chat, and he says, he wants my puppy, Khan. By the way, anyone who's new, if you don't know, my dog, his name is Khan, as in Genghis Khan. Yes, Genghis Khan, the Conqueror. He's named after that. And he's 15 and a half years old. February, he'll be 16. And he's been feeling a little off. So, Phil is helping out with $2. That'll help get him some treats. I thank you, and I appreciate that, Phil. Let me also go over some of the other comments here. We have Chuck from Long Island. He's here, and he says, thanks for answering Tucker Carlson third-party question last week. I always want to answer the questions of my chat. Always. Whether you do super chat or just regular, I always try and answer your questions as much as I can. And I always listen to your feedback, guys. This is interactive. This is a conversation. So I'm always looking to hear from you guys. Let me see. We've got a comment here and Chuck says, do you think the U.S. is an empire already ending, soon to end, or will we remain an empire? And he's enjoying the show. I think that's an interesting question. So let me see here. Do I think that the United States is an empire, as an empire? First of all, yes, America is an empire, and that's not a bad thing. And I know many people are taught especially in college, that, well, empires are evil and bad and terrible, which is stupid. That's a stupid way of looking at world history. In fact, empires, whether you're thinking about, again, going back to Genghis Khan and the Moguls, if you're thinking about Alexander the Great, you're looking at the Romans, the Greeks, the exchange of ideas that have happened in the world and history and language and written documentation, mathematics, that spread because of the empires that carried those ideas from one end of the world to the other end of the world. Empires in and of themselves are not necessarily negative. Besides the fact that empires, like any government, go through a cycle. Many of them start off with a lot of mistakes. When they're young, they make mistakes, they get things wrong, they're growing, they hit a peak eventually where they've worked out most of their problems, corruption is low, they're able to innovate, they get to dominate, taking in ideas from other countries around the world or other neighboring nations, taking in their ideas, integrating that, and are able to advance on technology, mathematics, sciences. A lot of innovation comes out of empires once they have matured. And then we see in the latter half, or the end of the cycle of an empire, you see a lot of decadence, you see a lot of corruption, you see a lot of failure, you see a lot more warfare, as many other nations and the next upcoming empire, they start trying to take territory, they're trying to gain resources, they're basically nipping at the heels of the older empire for their next turn at this cycle. This is what's happened throughout all of history. We saw it with the Greeks, which led to the Romans. You saw it with the Mongols. You saw it with the Huns. You've seen it over and over again in history. In China, this has happened. It's in every single major faction of the world. Everywhere in the world, every corner of the world. This same cycle happens over and over again. In terms of America, to your question, Chuck, is America an empire? Absolutely. Is America at the end of that cycle? Are we lagging? Has corruption gotten so great and we have become so decadent that we are failing? No, but we're getting there. I do not think that America is at the end cycle, the tail end of its empire. I think that America is getting close to that tail end. And I could be wrong, I could be missing some things, but I still think we're closer to our peak of being an empire, of expanding knowledge and information and improving things around the world. I think we're closer to that than we are to the end of America. But we do have more corruption today than we did, say, in the 1950s or the 1900s. We do have more difficulties, more cracks in the system today than we did in, say, the 1950s or the 1900s. That's true. But we are still the superpower of the world. Nations aren't trying to take away, in any real aspect, anything that America has. Yes, Iran is fighting against America, but they're not taking from America. They're trying to maintain and grow their power based in their region, not America. Yes, you could say that, well, terrorism does nip at America, but we're nowhere. The amount of terrorism targeted against the United States, while still too much, is nothing like the terrorism that happens on almost a daily or monthly basis in places like France or Germany, and many of the European nations. And God help you if you're in Africa. It's nothing like that for the United States. So, no, I don't think we're at the tail end. I think we're mature as an empire, and we're starting to become corrupt as an empire. And we're starting to see that corruption break down America, much of that because of insurgents, individuals in academia that are trying to tear down the system because they think they're smarter than what history has shown us. They think they're better, and that's a problem. So thank you for the question, Chuck. I appreciate that, and I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, let me know. Let me see here. Marikua is with us. Thank you, Marikua. Thank you for being here with us. This is Attorney Wayne Norman. Hello, Attorney Wayne Norman. Wayne, I don't recall if you've been with us before. I thank you for, letting me know that you're watching the program. I hope you're enjoying it. Whether you agree or not, let me know. I'm happy to hear your voice, but I do appreciate that you're taking some time and that you said hello. We have, again, Phil is with us. Wayne, I think Wayne is saying we will not remain an empire. I think we still have quite a way to go, but Wayne disagrees with me. He says we're not closer to our peak. He thinks that we are closer to our decay. And Wayne goes on to say that he believes it's our president is disobeying the foundational principles of our republic. I disagree. I think that's wrong. Not to say that any president and all presidents in America, especially in the modern era, have problems. They got a lot of problems. Whether you're talking about Obama and his authorization of killing American citizens on foreign ground without any charge whatsoever, that was a big problem. And that is a precedent that has now been made legally. It's a legal precedent that now exists because of the Obama administration. Open borders is a problem that we're dealing with now because of, Joe Biden and his idiocy. And so what you're seeing right now, I believe, the audience, you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree, but what you're seeing is Donald Trump is actually trying to enforce existing law, and it feels oppressive to some people because we've had so many presidents who haven't enforced the law as it exists. They've just let things go. They've just let things happen. In particular, we had the 8 years of Obama, we had the 4 years of Biden, where they just let things happen. They didn't enforce laws that were not approved of by the leftist progressive socialist ideology. And so that really caused the damage. So when you went from it's a free-for-all Wild West show in terms of, things like domestic terrorism, in terms of groups like Antifa or BLM and their lawlessness, like the autonomous zones that have been in America since about 2018, they are plagues on humanity, these autonomous zones, and they're always leftist. There are no right-wing autonomous zones anywhere in America. Doesn't exist. It's only a left-wing tactic which violates every local, state, and federal law. And so when you apply law and say, well, no, autonomous zones must be shut down, that's not going to happen. When you have the Department of Justice step in and say, well, Tim Walz, you have been abusing the governorship and your state. You have been allowing billions, tens of billions of dollars of fraud to happen, which has hurt the American people in your state and enabled terrorism and terrorism in other countries, in particular in Somalia. When you look at the investigations of the DOJ into California and their hospice fraud that has been going on for, again, these are things that have been happening for a decade or more. This predates Donald Trump as president, either the first or second time. You're looking at things that have going back to the time of Obama directly, if not even before that. You see these abuses, and every other administration allowed it to happen. And now we see that someone is stepping in and going, the corruption has gotten too much. There's too much. It's happening, and it's starting to have a negative impact on every state, not just the state it's happening in. It's starting to have carry-on effects and consequences. And so the federal government is stepping in to enforce the law. The media looks at what happened in Minnesota and looks at what's happening in California and in New York, in Ohio. We've seen this in many states, in Illinois, where we're seeing these frauds that are stealing tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in combination and programs and just corrupting programs designed to help the public. And they're actually absolutely doing nothing like that. When someone does that, the news media is saying, well, that's because Donald Trump's an authoritarian. He's not. He's following the law. He's just applying the law that already exists and saying, okay, we have to punish people for breaking the existing law. And these are the rules and regulations and process to actually punish them for breaking the laws that actually exist. The question isn't, did this happen? Now, the media is saying, well, no, it's Donald Trump because he's going to punish Tim Walz because he's a political opponent. That's not really true. Tim Walz, there is the fraud that exists. It has been proven. It is existing. It has existed for over a decade. And Democrats, when they had the opportunity, turned a blind eye to it. In California, the hospice care fraud has existed for well over a decade, if not two, and Gavin Newsom has ignored it, and Democrats have ignored it. We see that in Illinois with J.B. Pritzker and Brandon, the Mayor Brandon. We've seen that consistently for over a decade. You've seen it in New York State. It's been happening, and Democrats are going, well, this is political maneuvering. Donald Trump is such an oppressor. No, the crime, they're ignoring the underlying core problem, that there is a crime, that there is an abuse of power that is happening, and it is harming American citizens at the core. Take away whether Newsom is a Democrat or a Republican, take away Tim Walz, take away the political attachments, and look at what is the problem. People are abusing. There has been abuse of our system that has stolen money from Americans that have a need, and it has been used by criminals in the United States and overseas to abuse those American citizens, to take their money. It's not political, but people feel like it's political because the news media has mentioned it like it's a political. You're attacking Tim Walz because he's a Democrat. No, I'm attacking Tim Walz because he's a failure, because he's corrupt, and he has allowed an abuse against his people. You're picking on Gavin Newsom because he's a Democrat. No, I'm attacking Governor Newsom because he's a failure and he has allowed an abuse that has harmed American citizens. The fact that they happen to be Democrats is secondary to the core problem, which is you allowed the American people to be abused. That's the way we need to look at it. So when people say, and this is a long way, and I know I'm a little bit wordy, but Wayne, when we look at President Trump, and again, I'm not saying that President Trump is perfect. He is not. He isn't. I don't agree with every policy by Donald Trump 100%. That's not the case. He can be critiqued. But to say that, well, he's just a failure as a president is absolutely inaccurate. It's just not true. That isn't a reflection of reality. And many of the things that he is doing are being warped to benefit Democrats so that they can win. They're trying to preserve their power base in places like Minnesota, California, Illinois, Ohio, Massachusetts, in Washington State, in Oregon State. They're trying to overemphasize Orange Man bad so that they can keep their stranglehold even as their policies, their initiatives, they fail. They are objective failures and they are corrupt objectively. And we have found the evidence of this. We have seen this repeatedly. So they have to drumbeat, well, Orange Man bad, so you are distracted from the reality and say, Orange Man is being oppressive. He hasn't broken a law. You may not like the way that he has enacted and enforced the law. That's a totally different argument. You may not like the way he says things. That's an entirely different argument. But he hasn't broken a law. He has not. So there is a difference there. But this is, and again, I'm giving you a different way of looking at it that the mainstream news media who have an objective do not present. And I know some people will say, and Wayne, you may say this yourself. You may say, but Mike, you're a Republican. You're a conservative Republican. You've run an elected office. You have a bias. Yes, I do. I do not deny that. Of course I do. I'm a human being. Every human being on the face of the earth has a bias. That is the nature of being a human being. We all do. And there is no one in the news media who does not have a bias one way or another. Anyone who tells you they don't are liars because it's not true. And if you look at their writings, you look at their reporting, you will find that pattern of bias. Now, that may be a lot of bias or a little bit, but we all have it. I'm just honest and upfront. I'm a Republican. I see things from a conservative Republican point of view, and I'm willing to share that with you. The left is trying to tell you they're completely neutral. No, the hell they aren't. They weren't trained to be neutral by their colleges and universities. Their job places that they work in aren't neutral or locations. It's 80%, if not 90%, left-leaning in the newsrooms, in every newsroom, almost virtually every newsroom in America. So for them to tell you that, oh, well, we're all neutral. No, you're not. No, you're not. You just happen to have a majority of the airwaves, and you get to say your take is the neutral take. And that's because there's very few other people who are allowed to have a different point of view. Now, you may disagree with me to varying degrees, but I think if you step back and look at the evidence in front of us, I think you'll agree with me at least 50%. You'll agree that the evidence at its core is showing a consistent problem, and that Donald Trump, whether or not you agree with the full application of the law, is in fact just taking us back to a more lawful state in America. Not an oppressive one, but one where law and order is respected, which we have fallen away from over several decades. That's the way I see that. You may disagree with that, and I'm happy to hear if you do. Let me move to the next thing. Let's see. Phil says, I think the founding fathers, correct me if I'm wrong, believed that the empire, that empire was antithetical to the republic form of government, we had even Rome gave up the republic for an empire. Well, you really can't have an empire at the same time that you have a republic. They have similar values, they have similar goals, like any government is similar to another form of government. But yeah, empires tend to stand different than a republic. They have a different outlook, they have a different goal. That's true. I wouldn't say it's necessarily antithetical. You can be an empire and a republic at the same time. The problem is, eventually, no matter what form of government you put in place, corruption always happens because human beings are fundamentally flawed. We're not perfect beings. We're not angelic. No matter what your religion, no matter how your viewpoint is, human beings are flawed. We're not perfect. Therefore, there is a flaw, and given enough time, any system created by a human, which will have a flaw in it, will build up. That flaw will grow, and it will become a problem eventually. It's true of every system of government that has ever been created by man. It's true of everything that humanity has done in the existence of humanity, of written word. We know it always works that way because we're imperfect. To think of it as, oh, but republic is perfect. It isn't. It isn't a perfect form of government. It has flaws. It can be abused. It is abused by any and everyone who's ever tried to form a republic. There have been abuses, just as with an empire, as with any other form of government. So to say, oh, well, empires are antithetical to republic. No, they're not. It is the application and the amount of flaws, amount of corruption that differentiates any empire. And it's also a matter of time. We look back now fondly at most people, some academics don't, but most of the world, the Western world at the very least, look back on ancient Greece and ancient Rome pretty positive, looking at ancient Egypt. We look at these empires, and relative to their time, today we look at it and go, they were pretty good. They were pretty consistent. In fact, during their time, for the most part, people thought they were fantastic. They raised up the quality of life for their citizens and for their friends, not so much for their enemies like the barbarians up in France, the Gauls. No, but for everyone else, they raised up the quality of life. They made things better for people. They made things good. Now we have a different point of view. Now you get academics who look at the ancient Greeks or the ancient Romans or the ancient Egyptians, and they say, oh my God, they were colonizers. You're an idiot. Of course they were colonizers. Every country that exists today was a colonizer, and they are the victors. So what? That isn't inherently bad. But they're like, oh no, but you should be morally upset about that. Why? Why? If they were net, on average, over its totality, positive for the people and its neighbors, for the globe, in effect, then that's not a problem. Yeah, they were an empire. So, was it good for everyone? Yes. Okay, then this was a good thing. And I use Greece and Rome because Western society is based on a lot of that, and also ancient Egypt. But you can look at, you could say that the Soviet Union, which was in existence for about 75 years, was an empire. Empires don't necessarily mean that you own the world or a large part of the world. We often think of empires of like the Mongols, or we think of the Romans, and these spanning 2/3 of the world. That's not necessarily what an empire could be. Much, much smaller. And the Soviet Union was an empire of socialism, and it failed. It wasn't great. It did not have achievements that lifted its people up and made them more capable and more improved the quality of life. It froze the quality of life essentially at the 1950s. And I know that because I've actually lived in the Soviet Union. So you will see that that's a difference. So empires don't necessarily have to be all encompassing of the entire world. They can be smaller and we can judge them. And was the Soviet Union, which was an empire, was that positive? No, it was not. Empirically, looking at the data, looking at the results, it wasn't, which is why it fell. Is American empire? Yes. Is it positive? Well, considering that we've lifted more people out of poverty in the existence of the United States than any other nation or empire in the history of mankind, we have created more innovation. We have created more opportunity. We have had more advancement and more people being fed than ever in the history of mankind. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. Does that make us perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it does make us pretty good. Let's see. And I think Wayne kind of agrees with me. Maybe. Not entirely, but maybe. All right. So let me see. There's some other comments. You guys are talking amongst yourselves. What is this? Phil says, I know Mike disagrees with me on this, but since Bismarck, that would be Germany, the welfare state and the warfare state, welfare and warfare state have been connected. I disagree with that. I do. Even in Rome, bread and circuses were ways of keeping the people not looking at the empire. Yes, that's true. You can always, and most governments, big or small, whether they're an empire or not, have some degree of distracting the public because you're never perfect. Again, there is no perfect system. There is no perfect government. There is no perfect governance or law. There are always people who will break laws because criminals exist. It's just a reality of humanity. There are evil people that are born and they just exist. It doesn't matter what kind of government you have. So, yes, there are always problems and there is always some degree of distraction in every government, in every governance, in existence of mankind. I do not see that as the same thing as a welfare state and a warfare state. I do not agree with that. But that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. Phil says, Mike is 100% right on the big government policies failing domestically. Big government overseas faces a lot of the same problems. Well, big government will make big mistakes. It's just the nature of the fact that it's so big. Its actions have consequences that reach out farther. It's like the difference of dropping a pebble in a lake and dropping a boulder in a lake. You drop the boulder, you're going to have more of an impact. You're going to have a bigger ripple. It's going to travel much, much farther than if you drop a pebble. It's the same concept. So the fact that we are bigger, we have a very large, in fact, too large government, means that the consequences when we screw up, just like when we do something right, whether we do something, if America does something great, and we have, then the impact and the consequences of that are going to help every country on the face of the earth because we have that much of a reach. When we screw up, well, the same thing. We're going to reach every country on the face of the earth eventually, and they're going to have a negative impact. So it's a double-edged sword. As you get to be a superpower or the superpower of the world, everything you do, right or wrong, will affect everyone, every time. And the question is, are we doing or have we done more things positive than negative? The negative will always exist. The positive, not necessarily. But we've had positives under the American Empire. Are they more important and have they been more beneficial to the humanity than the negatives? I believe, objectively, the answer is yes. Some people feel, the progressives feel, well, the answer is no. Their criteria is very much based on their personal or their ideology having control and having power. If you take that away and if you just look empirically at the net result of America, even with the wars that we have had, even with wars that you may or may not disagree with, in whether you think the United States should be involved with international politics or not. When you look at the net result of the United States being involved, as much as we have been, as we are a superpower, the net answer is we have been a net positive on the world, at least to this date. We are a net positive. The world is better off because we are the superpower that we are. Will that always be the case? Maybe not. But at this moment, it is. Even with all the problems, even with the small incidental things, we are still the greatest country that has ever existed on the face of the earth because we have uplifted and we have improved the quality of life for the most people in the history of mankind. And no one is competing with that. No one is capable of doing that. So, yeah, we have some problems, but we will deal with it. Let's see. Phil goes on to say, come on. Why is it not showing? Show up. Says, Mike, you're absolutely right about the fault in human nature. I'm a big fan of the Anglo-Saxon traditions that focused on the merchant and the yeoman farmer and local rule of law. Yeah, but that's great for a small community. Doesn't work on a big scale. And the reason why I say that is because you're talking about English law, which is the precursor of American law. And we took the best elements that we could of British law, of the original English law system, and we transferred it and transplanted that into America. And we have been living with that. And that evolved with our country, with flaws and without. And at the end of the day, well, what works for a very small country at a time when all nations were relatively small, you can do certain things. It's like, how can I make it make sense? Think of green energy. Okay? You want to have a solar power plant, or rather, solar panels. It works fine for you in your house, for the energy that you need for your house, depending on where your house is and depending on how much electricity you use, you may make a surplus of energy. But that doesn't work for a city. And we have seen solar power by itself does not work. There is no 100% solar powered city or nation in the world because it's not efficient. It works on the smallest of scales. Your house, one house, works fantastic. You put in 1 million people, it fails. It doesn't work. And it has massively negative connotations and consequences. We're talking about destroying farmland, greenland. It destroys ecosystems. It's toxic. You have to replace the panels, depending on where you are in the world, either every 7 years or every 15 years to maintain maximum return. You've got to worry about the batteries, which can spontaneously explode. Plus, they wear down over time and then they explode. You have to worry about the transmission systems, which we know for a fact have to be replaced. They are archaic in America and most of the world. We have archaic, almost every country in the world has archaic transmission lines for electricity. And so that's pitiful. It just doesn't work. And the same thing with the idea of the medieval merchant, the medieval farmer, and by the way, that also means you're also talking about the medieval noble and the medieval king, the feudal system. Very different. The feudal system doesn't work on a higher scale with more people and more technology. It just doesn't work. So that's the way I see that. I could be wrong. Phil goes, I'm not a progressive. Not saying that you are. I don't think you are progressive. I feel like a Robert Taft conservative and libertarian. We'll have to talk about some of this separately. Okay. Well, I don't like labels. People go, well, what kind of a Republican are you? I believe in teaching people to fish rather than feeding them fish. I don't want people to be dependent on government. Now, you can say there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. Is that more like a Abraham Lincoln kind of Republican? Is it more of a Ronald Reagan Republican, more of a Donald Trump Republican? I don't care. Those are labels and those are cages. And that's not, and every time you try and put those kind of labels on someone, it isn't accurate because you're not going to be Robert Taft. So that doesn't apply accurately. I'm not Ronald Reagan. I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not Abraham Lincoln. So that doesn't work. I think the better way to say is, what is your core principle? How do you define your core principle? And that's what we judge by. One of the core principles of my conservative Republican values is we follow laws, we enforce the laws as they are, not as we want them to be, but as they are. And I want people to not be dependent on government. I want people to be self-sufficient as much as possible. There is government and there is a role for government, and it is a smaller role than what we have today. But government has its place. It is important. Laws are important. Enforcement of the laws are important. But there is also individualism. So that is something else. Okay. So I hope that helps a little bit. But again, folks, I love hearing from each and every one of you. I do like having a conversation with my audience. And like I said, we can always talk about something different. No matter what I have scheduled, we can always have a different conversation. But I do want to make sure you understand. There are many people who are looking at, when I was talking about the Strait of Hormuz, there is the leftist point of view, there is the right-wing point of view, there are different points of view. But I believe, and most are not saying this is a tactic of war. Bluster, saber rattling is a tactic of every leader in a war. Doesn't matter what they're saber rattling about. The fact is, we're going to win. We're going to destroy you guys. You should surrender. It is a tactic. That's what it boils down to. It doesn't matter what Iran says. Doesn't matter what America says. It's essentially saber rattling that says, you give up or we will wreck you. Period. Full stop. Every country is saying that. And you can be more or less diplomatic about it, but at the end of the day, we're going to wipe you out. Give up now. That's exactly what is happening. That is what Iran is saying to the United States from a position of weakness, and it's what the United States is saying to Iran from a position of strength. That's the reality of it. That's what we're looking at. And it's not about, and I don't believe that Donald Trump realistically, or anyone in our military realistically believe that the United States would be taking as our territory the the waterway that is the Strait of Hormuz, because it is impractical. We could take it. It's impractical to be able to keep it. It would cause more political problems and more economic problems and more military problems than it would be worth. I think it's just saber rattling coming from Donald Trump. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a reality. We would say that because every other country is terrified that we might do it. That's why that's why you do it. Because no one else would be able, if we did it, no one could stop us. They couldn't prevent us from taking it. They might be able to win it over time. They may be able to have a political war and say, well, it's unpopular with the American people and we'll give it back, kind of like the Panama Canal, which took decades before we gave it back. But we could take it. We absolutely can. And there's no one who can stop us if we truly did that. But is it worth it? No. And so it's saber rattling. That's what that is. And we have to recognize it for what it is, not what it's being used for, which to say, well, Donald Trump is some authoritarian dictator. No, he's not. No, he's not. That's just Look, you don't have to like him, but to say he's an authoritarian dictator, that's just an exaggeration. It's just silly. It's not true. And if you sit back and take away your emotions and say, take away whether you like Donald Trump or not, which is immaterial, I always have to remind people, it doesn't matter if you like the president. You don't have to like them as a person. Are they effective? Are they efficient? That's why they have a job. Not because you like them, not because you want to have a dinner with them or you want to hang out and drink beer. That's immaterial. That is useless, meaningless. Who cares if you like them or not? That has nothing to do with it. Whether you like them or not doesn't make anything they do better or worse. You like Obama. Obama bombed innocent people, American citizens, without any reason. Do you still like Obama? Because that's a fact. Obama allowed people to die in Darfur. He, as a senator, was saying that America had to do something about the genocide, a real and actual genocide that was happening in the Sudan, in the Darfur region. A documented, absolutely confirmed, mathematical, empirical, actual genocide was going on. And as a senator, Barack Obama was very concerned about that and wanted the United States to do something about it. As president over 8 years, Barack Obama did nothing about it. He didn't care. He didn't get involved at all. So there is that difference there. That's the difference between what politicians say and what they actually do and what they believe. Let me switch up a little bit here. Okay, let's talk about Jason Arday. And I think this is kind of important. So a lot of people may not be familiar with Jason Arday. Let me use this. So this is Jason Arday. This is a video from the Black Conservative Perspective. It's just a YouTube channel, pretty decent. He sometimes finds some interesting stories, but this little compilation I want to present. This is Jason Arday when he became the youngest Black professor at Cambridge College. Yes, in the United Kingdom. Yes, he's British. Yes, it's foreign. Let's go forward.
I'm Professor of Sociology of Education at the University of Cambridge.
3 years ago, Jason Arday became the youngest ever Black professor appointed.
Okay. So as you can see in this coverage by CBS News, again, left-leaning news, Jason Arday, he became a professor at one of the most prestigious colleges in the world. And he's Black, he's young. He also is, or I've seen it written, it's been reported that he was somewhat artistic, that he was incapable of being able to speak until he was 11. He didn't learn to read and write with any proficiency. He was illiterate until he was 17. These are his own accomplishments by his own word. Whether or not you believe it is totally up to you. But this is what he says. He didn't speak until he was 11. He was illiterate until he was 17. Between 17 and 27, he not only learned to read and write, he became a professor. He became so good at reading, writing, at being an academic, that he was able to be elevated to a Cambridge professor, one of the top appointments in academics in the world. And then people actually paid attention. See, there were people at the time that looked at Jason Arday, and not because he's Black, but because of his work, they had some questions. They had questions about, you really made it to being 11 years old before you started speaking? You really were incapable of reading and writing until you were 17. And in the space of roughly a decade, you were able to become a professor at Cambridge. You're that good. I mean, that's not just genius. That's mega genius. And when someone says, when someone comes up to you and they go, I'm a mega genius, you're going to turn around and say to them, probably not. You're more likely to believe that's a scam or that's a lie or that's an exaggeration than to believe it's true. And quite honestly, you're more likely to be struck by lightning by about 5 times. You'll be struck by lightning about 5 times faster than you'll be able to find and just casually run into a mega genius in your lifetime. If you ever do. Okay? It's just not going to happen. It is highly unlikely. So we have reason to doubt. Also, by the way, Jason Arday claimed that he ran 600 miles in 600 days. In 60 days. He ran 600 miles in 60 days. He went through 35 marathons. No, excuse me. I had to write the first time. He went and ran 30 marathons in 35 days. That would make him superhuman. That would make him superhuman if he in fact did that. So not only is he would be one of the greatest geniuses in mankind's history, he would also be his physiology would be superhuman. But these are the things that were on his resume, and no one questioned it because Jason Arday is black with a mental disability, DEI. That's it. You can't question it, or you're not supposed to question things that are legitimate questions on his resume. You can't have any doubt. You can't question it whatsoever. It must be true. And this is the problem with DEI. And this is one of the great examples of DEI and the consequences of DEI. Jason Arday he became a professor because of DEI. He had a very questionable resume. He had very questionable accomplishments. He was never questioned on his resume, on his accomplishments, including his thesis. And then after he got the job and performed mediocre at best, people started highlighting the problems, and then they started asking the questions they should have asked before day one. And what happened as a result of all of that is that there was I guess you can call it an inquiry, a lot of things you can call it. But there was an inquiry. People started looking into Jason Arday. And the moment that people started looking, and there was an investigation to say, did you plagiarize? This is like the worst thing you can do as an academic, as a professor in any college, let alone the pinnacle of Cambridge. If you were to be accused of plagiarism, that is a career-ending accusation. It is the worst thing you can do in academics. You cannot be. That's actually even worse than sexual assault. It is worse than a sexual assault to say that you plagiarized your work. And if there is any evidence of that, you have no career. And you will never, as an academic, you will never regain your career. You're done. That's it. You'll never be able to work again as an academic. You wouldn't be able to become a school teacher. That's how bad it is. That's how academics look at plagiarism. But there's evidence of it, or at least evidence enough to warrant an investigation. It seems that Jason Arday, his thesis, his documents, well, they seem to be plagiarized. They seem to come almost word for word, almost graph for graph from some of his students and their papers and their documentation. Like entire huge sections. He's not just paraphrasing a line here or there. He's not just quoting someone. He is taking pages of information and saying, yeah, I wrote it. It's my words. I said that. And he didn't. And he couldn't justify it. As a result, Jason Arday was going to be investigated. So he resigned. Now, most people would say, if you've been accused of something and then you plead the fifth, as an example with Mr. I Am Science, Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci seems guilty. Why? He had a pardon. He was supposedly doing his job. Here's the part that most people miss in the whole thing about Dr. Fauci. I brought it up before in this channel. I'll bring it up again. Not only did Dr. Fauci have a 10-year federal pardon for any crime he might have done, it is a fact. It is a precedent of law. It is a fact of law that if you are doing your job and you work for the federal government, and if you do your job as is the description of your job, you're just doing your work, whatever it may be, you cannot be sued by states or individuals. Because if you're doing your job and your job breaks the law of any individual state, you are immune. So Dr. Fauci had limited immunity and he had a pardon. Therefore, if Dr. Fauci was doing his job as his job is described, he is immune. And if there was a crime on the federal side beyond what he was doing, then he had immune. Then he is, again, immune because of a pardon. So there is no state that could sue Dr. Fauci if he was doing his job. And there is no federal government, no repercussions. He took the fifth. Given that you have limited immunity and a pardon, and you take the fifth, that is somebody, and I made the argument previously that he actually rescinded his pardon, but that's a different thing. But in doing that, he seems guilty. That would be the action of someone who is afraid of the legal ramification and consequences of his actions. So he's taking defense. When someone like Jason Arday does a similar thing where he says, okay, I'm being investigated, I resign, which would prevent and end the investigation. It's very much like, better example is Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo was being investigated by Tish James. Actually, he had been investigated by Tish James, the Attorney General of New York. Tish James declared publicly that she started an investigation based on 7 allegations of sexual abuse by Andrew Cuomo, and she ended the investigation with evidence of 11 sexual assaults by Andrew Cuomo against women. So she started an investigation based on allegations of 7. She ended with proof of 11. Proof of 11, according to Attorney General Tish James. Andrew Cuomo was going to be taken to court. There was going to be a grand jury, and he would have been pulled into court as governor of New York on 11 sexual assaults. Should have been for also 16,000 Americans that died because of Andrew Cuomo, but that's another question altogether. But he was going to go in. And to avoid that, Andrew Cuomo resigned. He resigned, and the charges for his crimes disappeared. Just poof, went away. He never got charged for those 11 cases. He should have been. He wasn't. He got to walk away. Jason Arday was going to be investigated. He resigned. Poof. The investigation on whether or not he plagiarized, whether or not he earned his job, whether or not he was qualified, disappears. Just went away. Why? Because he resigned. Now, the story doesn't end there, as you can tell by the title from ABC News, or you can take a look over at, there's a couple of different articles about it. You can also go to the BBC, obviously, since this is British we're talking about, and they go, it was a public witch hunt. He killed himself. He self-deleted because of this inquiry. Mind you, he had already resigned. The investigation disappeared the moment that he did that. But obviously, now that it was international news, now that people were saying, well, is this an example of DEI? And that's the big thing. People were looking at this and going, this is proof of why DEI doesn't work. He was unqualified for the position from day one. He should never have gotten the job. In fact, there are some in the news media, I think I have one right here, who would say he should never have been given the job. And if, in fact, if he wasn't given the job at Cambridge, then he would never have been investigated, and therefore he would never have self-deleted. That's one way of looking at it. But the one thing, but the left, they're looking at this and they're saying, no, you misunderstand. The problem isn't Jason Arday. It's not DEI. It's the people who asked the question. But wait a minute, the question was appropriate. And I say this because think of yet another example of this. Let's look at Ketanji Brown Jackson, the United States Supreme Court Justice that was put in place by Joe Biden. Now, the first thing that Joe Biden said before anything was his Supreme Court pick was going to be a black woman. Those are restrictions. Those are limitations. He said, in effect, de facto, that he was not going to pick the best Supreme Court justice for the United States. He wasn't going to pick someone who was the best person that would help America the most. And I'm not even taking away the bias of being a Democrat and being, left wing or anything, just by saying that the only person that Joe Biden was going to make as Supreme Court justice was a woman who was black, means that the overwhelming majority of people in the universe could not be. That's a limitation. That is a restriction. That is not the best person. By definition, it cannot be. There may have been a Democratic woman who is Asian that was a better choice for Supreme Court justice, and they threw her out the window and said goodbye, ran the bus over her. Why? Because it had to be, not just a woman, it had to be a black woman, and she had to be a Democrat, and she had to be the right age. I was recently just talking with someone the other day, walking down in the Bronx, a gentleman who's 57, a little younger than me. And he goes, well, no, but, she's fantastic. She was the best choice. And I said, well, here's all the things that are a problem with her. And I go, did you know, according to CNN, at the time, Ketanji Brown Jackson, there were 10 other black, female, Democrat federal justices who had been doing the job at least twice as long as Ketanji Brown Jackson with a better record and were more qualified and more experienced that could have been a Supreme Court justice. And the only difference between those 10 women and Ketanji Brown Jackson is that Ketanji was younger. And that's why they picked her, because she was the youngest, so that she would serve the longest amount of time. Again, not because she was the best for America, not because she was qualified, but because she hit the right tick boxes. Just like Jason Arday, he hit the right tick boxes. The problem is that once you take someone who is unqualified for their job, they're unqualified either because of their actions, like, say, as I gave you the exact example of Andrew Cuomo, or because of their hubris, say, like Dr. Fauci, or they're incapable of doing the job properly, like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, then you have consequences. just like Jason Arday. And Arday exemplifies the worst outcome of those outcomes. He self-deleted. Now, that's as bad as it gets. And I don't think that Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to ever self-delete, because she, to be fair, she's just too damn arrogant. She thinks she's more intelligent than everyone else in the universe. And she's an activist on top of anything else. She needs to do her activism always. And if she's not there to do the activism, oh my God, then, America is going to become a dictatorship, which is stupid. But that is the mindset there. And that is because they're DEI hires. They were unqualified. They weren't the best person for the job. They were the right checkbox for the job. And when you get the best checkbox, whether it's a Dr. Fauci, a Governor Cuomo, or a Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, or in this case, a Professor Jason Arday, they always fail. And that failure affects everyone else. Every student taught by Jason Arday was not taught by the best person, and they suffered. They're not as qualified. They're not as capable. They can't compete. And that's part of why I believe he self-deleted. It's part of why he was being investigated. It's part of why we now see that places like the BBC are trying to cover up the reality. He was a DEI hire. He should have been questioned in the first place. His credentials, his story should have been ironed out, confirmed, made sure that he was the guy he said he was, that he did the things he said he did, that he's as smart as he said he was before he got the job. But instead, they said, but you're black and you have a mental issue. So you get the job. You've hit enough tick boxes. You got the right check marks. No one can question you. You must have the job, even if you can't do it. And other people suffer. The people who could have actually been hired, the better quality of teaching that the students would have been able to receive, the better jobs that those students who would have been better students would have been able to qualify for. It is a chain. DEI doesn't just hurt the person who gets the job, which in this case was the ultimate pain of Jason Arday, not being able to live with the embarrassment and the consequences of him being a DEI hire. It goes beyond that. But people want you to stop, and the BBC, the left-leaning institutions, the academia want you to focus on, but he's black and he self-deleted. That's a problem of the right. They made him do this. No one made Jason Arday self-delete except Jason Arday. He made that choice. It was a stupid choice. I think he could have made better choices. I think he could have still lived a full and fruitful life, but he made the worst choice possible. But that was on him. Just like lying about his resume was a choice that Jason Arday made. No one forced him to do that. No one forced him to say he ran the marathons he ran. No one forced him to submit the papers that said, okay, for his doctorate. No one made him submit that material. He did it himself. No one made him plagiarize any of the materials that he may have plagiarized. No one else made that happen. Jason Arday did. There are consequences for that. And if you take the consequences away and replace them with rewards, like you see from DEI, that if we take away that and say, even though you're not the best, you'll get the same reward as if you are the best, there is a consequence. There is a problem with Ketanji Brown Jackson being a Supreme Court justice. She's not good enough. We have seen that in her dissent, in all of her writing in the Supreme Court. go case by case by case. I've read many of her cases and her dissents, and I've listened to her arguments, and they are horrible. In fact, virtually, not actually at this point, every member of the Supreme Court has had a problem and said, you don't know what you're talking about, to Ketanji Brown Jackson. That includes the Democrats. Sotomayor has come out and publicly criticized and embarrassed Ketanji Brown Jackson for some of her decisions and her reasoning and her lack of logic and her lack of legislative, judicial intelligence. She dumbs down the Supreme Court. And the problem with that is that hurts not Ketanji Brown Jackson, that hurts America. Whether it's on the left or the right, she hurts everyone. She brings the bar down lower, and she makes it worse for everyone. That's what Jason Arday is exemplifying. People want to say, it's a witch hunt. Oh my God, you put so much pressure. If you didn't cheat, if DEI didn't elevate Jason Arday artificially, if DEI didn't ignore all of the questions, the red flags that were attached to Jason Arday and his resume, he would never have been in the position to fall internationally as he did, which he then used as the reason to self-delete. This is a Jason Arday problem. This is a DEI problem. And now magnify what happened to Jason Arday, what is happening to Ketanji Brown Jackson, what was allowed to happen with people like Dr. Fauci and Andrew Cuomo, and magnify that by about 50 million people in a nation of 350 million people. What do you think our future is going to be? That's the thing I'm taking out of what's happening with Jason Arday. And I know a lot of people are looking at it and going, but Mike, I'm not looking at it that way. I think we must. We are being given a clear example in Europe, in England, right now, that we must correct the problems we have created with DEI. That Donald Trump is on the correct path of ending DEI and not just renaming it, not just changing the cosmetics of what the title is, but actually substantively changing this. Because if we do not, within 5 to 20 years, depending on which field of study you may be in, depending on the full impact, somewhere between the next 5 to 20 years, this is going to devastate America. Devastate America. And it will affect everyone. And it will be negative towards not just the economy, it'll destroy our society. We must follow the lead of Donald Trump on DEI in ending it and reversing the mistakes that were made. The Jason Ardays in America must be fired. Whether that's a woman who was able to join into a business and was part of the executive board and never earned it, or anyone else. It just needs to be done. This is a problem for all of America. Most people aren't thinking of it that way. We have been given a warning sign. We have been shown a blueprint. We have been shown the consequence of DEI. It is staring us in the face in the name of Jason Arday, and we can either react to that or we can go down the path that the left would like you to have, and we're going to empathize with this very tortured soul, I have no doubt, and say, oh my God, it's so bad. Well, it's because the right are mean bullies. Oh my God, they forced him to do this. No, we did. The right did not make this happen. This is a direct and singular consequence of Jason Arday and DEI policies. The right have nothing to do with this. To say that is an excuse. It's a dodge. It's an emotional manipulation. And please, you should recognize it and accept it as that. It is an emotional manipulation. It is a way to change the goalposts and try to blame someone else for their own problems. The left did this to Jason Arday, and they don't want to take any of the grief or the consequences of their actions. DEI did this to Jason Arday. And if they didn't, Jason Arday would be alive today. And probably would have had a happier life. But I can't be sure about that last part. Okay. By the way, most people probably didn't hear it. I'm switching back to the United States now. Again, DEI, an important subject. But you probably didn't hear about it. Some people are also trying to distract you right now with Greenland. Again, there's several stories here where the left are trying to find a story to pin onto the right just before the midterm elections. As the average American citizen who doesn't pay attention to politics, they're going to start paying attention like they actually think they know something. And they're going to be looking at all the ads, and then they're going to vote based on the ads, not because of the politicians and what they said, not about the qualifications. They're going to look at an ad and they're going to say, ooh, that looks really smart. That seems to be someone who knows what they're doing. They look good. I'll vote for them. And this is how we got all of the crazy, stupid, absolutely useless politicians that we have in America. That's left and right. Yeah, we have a lot of useless politicians right now, but they look good in a commercial. They had a really catchy slogan in a commercial, 30 seconds, but they are useless dead weights that are dragging down America in reality. So what is the left doing here? Why the movement of a U.S. I love this. This is from Time Magazine. Time Magazine is wasting your time. Total distraction. Why the movements of a U.S. oil company in Greenland have attracted attention. No, they didn't. That's why only Time is talking about this news story. No one else did. No one else cared. No one in the world cared about this story. Time is using this because they needed to say Orange Man bad, MAGA bad, Republicans bad, America bad. They needed a story, but they didn't have one. And they're trying to find something to pin on Republicans to make Democrats look better. They're trying to make sure that you vote blue no matter who. And they didn't have a story this week to make it look right. So they had to just go and scrape the barrel and try and manufacture a story that isn't a big deal. If we look at this, this is by Tiago Ventura. Tiago, you suck as a reporter. This is a terrible story. Look at this. Maybe it's your editor. Maybe your editor put this together. They did a terrible job. So a U.S. oil company, Greenland Energy is the name of the company, is delaying its Arctic drilling project following permit discussions and a public rebuke from the Greenland government for moving equipment without authorization. Now, Greenland Energy is a U.S.-based company, and they try very hard. Time tries very hard at the end of this article to tie this to the Trump administration. They try and tie it to Donald Trump. It's not really connected, but they try and make a connection because obviously Orange Man bad, vote Democrat. It doesn't exist. Now, this whole thing, and they're like, oh my God, everyone's freaking out because a U.S. energy, an oil company, they just got rebuked. They got a fine from Greenland. And you know, Donald Trump, he wants Greenland. So this is evil, right? It has nothing to do with it. No, it doesn't. What happened has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with American politics. It has nothing to do with the mineral deposits in Greenland. This is a pre-existing contract that has been there for some time. There may be as much as $2 billion a year of oil deposits in Greenland. And Greenland Energy is a Texas oil company that's looking for oil. They're just going out and I forget what they're wild card or wild jacking where they experimentally, they go out, they drill in certain locations where they think there might be oil, and they find out. They drill down and say, did we hit oil? No, then let's go and find another location and we'll try it again. It's a hit and run experiment. There's actually a term for it in the oil fields. I forget what it is right now, but yeah. I'll address that in a second. I see your statement there, Hal, and I think you're wrong, but I'll explain. So it's not a big deal. This isn't a story. It's been pushed as a story. It's not a story. It's not a story. This is just, okay, oil company. They moved part of their equipment from one location to another location. They didn't get permission to do that. They just did it. Now, they were supposed to get permission from the country Greenland. Okay. Does that change anything? Is that American politics? Is that America trying to take over Greenland? No. Is it connected to Donald Trump? Did Donald Trump tell Greenland Energy to take the equipment and move it? No, he did not. Was that coming from MAGA or Republicans? No. This isn't political. It's a company that thought they could save some money and tried to move forward their contract. They tried to move forward their deal. They were being told that the deal was going to take longer for them to get the permission to do what they wanted to do, which is to find oil. And guess what? No. It's just a company trying to be, well, you can say greedy or aggressive, whatever. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. But they're trying to make this. This is about Greenland. Oh my God. People are like, oh my God, this is attached to Donald Trump. Where is it? What do we know about Greenland Energy and its links to Donald Trump? This isn't about Donald Trump. This isn't about Donald Trump. It's about a company that made a business move to try to advance their research, and it failed. They got caught. They got called out. They're going to pay a fine. Big deal. Donald Trump didn't tell them to do this. Doesn't matter. Donald Trump is not relevant to this story unless you're trying to demonize Donald Trump, Republicans, MAGA for the 2026 election. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I did see the comment here, and we have a comment from Hal who says, I did a quick Google search to see if anyone else picked up this story. Of course, other people picked up the story. The Guardian, CNBC, Fortune, and others came up. And of course they did. Of course they did. Oh, I said, no one's talking about this. No one's talking about it. It's not a story. I'm not saying that the story didn't get published. I'm not saying that people didn't try and make this a story. Maybe I didn't give it the emphasis that you would like, Hal. Yeah, it exists. There are articles about this. That's why I found it. It's why I'm talking about it. But let's be honest here. What other commentators are talking about this? They're not. What other pundits are talking about this? They're not. You said nobody covered this. Nobody covered this. Mike, how could you say nobody covered? And there's an article from Time and CNBC, and there's The Guardian. They've all done articles. Okay, maybe I should rephrase when I say nobody covered it. This isn't national news. No one gives a damn. No one gives a damn. Did they make the article? Did they put this out? Absolutely they did. Did it get any traction? No, it didn't. Does anyone care? No, and they shouldn't. They were fishing for it. They wanted more traction. They wanted more pundits talking about it, not quite the way that I am, pointing out that it's a useless story, that it doesn't really have any connection to Donald Trump, that this isn't about Greenland, Donald Trump's efforts to take over Greenland. It's not. This isn't about Donald Trump being an authoritarian trying to take over the world. It's not. That's what the article and the headline, that's what the stories are trying to make you feel like, It's not. So when I said nobody's covering this, oh my God, but Mike, people have talked about it. They've written articles about it. So obviously, someone did that. So you're just a liar. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And I think everybody knows that. Now, you can nitpick and say, but Mike, you said nobody, and that's not true. They did do this. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there are several articles out there. And it's not a talking point in America. It's not a talking point amongst most pundits. It's not something that has carried forward. And is that the better way to say it? It's the same thing. Oh, settle down, Mike. Take the L. Just move on. You're trying to call me out for something that's really not relevant and not accurate. You're trying to take me by literal word for word. Oh my God, nobody, absolutely nobody. If any human being on the face of the earth talked about this story, then Mike, you are wrong. Come on. Yeah, of course there were articles. No one cares. The story didn't take the life. It's not like Jason Arday's story. You're not seeing this covered by the world. People who were supposed to be convinced that this is about Donald Trump and authoritarianism and America crumbling, and it didn't take. That's the point I'm putting out there. That's what they were trying to do. And whether or not there was 5 people who tried to do that, or whether it was 50, it doesn't really matter. You took the wrong point of view on this. You're looking for a way to say, but Mike, you're wrong. Let me discredit you. But I'm not wrong. The essence of what I am talking about is correct. So you're trying to discredit so that people ignore the fact that, oh, this was an attempt to try and bolster the Orange Man bad storyline. The Trump is an authoritarian. He is dangerous to Greenland and other places, which isn't true. And I'm just pointing that out. How little this story has anything to do with that, although they are making the illusions, saying that this is directly connected to Trump and this is something that is influenced by Donald Trump. It's not. And that's my point. So, yeah, I'm not going to let someone try and discredit me for something that I'm accurately reporting on. And if I miss the word, when I say figuratively nobody, and it's not literally nobody, I think my audience is able to understand the difference between the two. I would imagine you guys know the difference of those two things. But I mean, if you want to attack my character, if you want to attack the substance of what I'm speaking about and going, well, literally, that's not correct, Mike. Well, okay, you got me there. It wasn't that nobody talked about it. No one cared because it didn't work, because it was so much of a stretch that it wasn't able to capture the mindset. And my point on all of that is more so that we are seeing, and we have seen for 12 years now, that the left is trying to latch on to any story that they can to try and demonize Republicans, MAGA, and Orange Man Bad. In that order, they're trying their best because they want power. And they're using small stories like this one that are insignificant and bigger stories. Even you can even find people who are talking about Jason Arday, and they're linking that back to Donald Trump getting rid of DEI, and that this is a backlash. What happened to Jason Arday is a backlash because of conservatives and Donald Trump, and it's their fault that Jason Arday decided to lie on his resume, be incapable of doing the job he was hired for, and ultimately taking his own life. They are making those arguments right now, and it's as specious, it's as inaccurate as what we're seeing about Greenland, a story that's been dead for a long time because the United States isn't trying to be a conqueror and an empire and just take over Greenland. We're not doing it. We could have done it by now. 56,000 people on on all of Greenland. 56,000. If we wanted to take it over, we could do it by Tuesday. Today's Sunday. It's just not a reality. It's just not. But again, I was trying to make one point, and if people missed that point, I wanted to make the clarification. So let me move forward, because how I love this. Again, you're trying to discredit me, Mike. But if you did the research, how do you know I didn't? It's a turn of phrase. You're saying, "Oh my God, no one in the universe." Mike, you said no one in the universe, and there are these other articles. It's assuming that I didn't know that there was any other article that existed. No, there are other articles that existed. Of course, I'm aware of that. That's why, but I selected this article to be the one that I wanted to use to talk about with time. But again, that didn't change the point. And I can show you dozens of articles that I've read through, that I have actually researched for every single thing that I'm talking about here. There are more than one point of view. Both, in many cases, there's from the left and the right. And I'm specifically targeting only the left-leaning articles in almost every single subject. So, I'm not putting myself in any position. I'm just being clear. And considering that you're the only one who's upset about that, Hal, and you're the only one who didn't get it, I'm taking that as a you issue, because you want people to think, all right, it's connected to the Orange Man Bad, and Mike is just a right winger who's too extreme. But I'm not, and you know it. Okay. So let me address another story. This one being highlighted by the New York Post. And of course, and to be very clear, because it seems I have to be very clear on these things, it isn't just the New York Post who actually wrote about this. There were other news publications, multiple news publications, that have various stories on this. I did a short video on this previously before doing this on my live stream, talking about Zohran Mamdani's wife, talking about Zohran Mamdani trying to use public funds to send his wife to go over to Syria. And I just wanted to cover that a little bit. I believe that we didn't get to talk about it last week. Actually, I think we did talk about it a little bit last week. I may have actually gotten that wrong, but just to be sure, I wanted to cover this because the fallout from this has been that now Zohran Mamdani has blamed the whole thing on his staff. He said that, in case you didn't know about the story, Zohran Mamdani's wife, who is not elected, wanted to go and visit her family who happened to be in Syria and in Lebanon. Syria and Lebanon are do not go countries. In other words, that the United States State Department has issued an advisory to the American people. You should not go to these countries. They are too dangerous. They are deadly for American citizens. If you go there, you have a high risk of being either taken hostage or killed. These are do not go countries. She wants to go and see her family. That's otherwise called a vacation. And she wanted to use the NYPD. And Zohran Mamdani wanted to use the NYPD to protect her as a security force. Now, problems with this are multiple. One, that's not what the New York Police Department is supposed to do. Two, they don't have the authority to go to a foreign country and be able to protect a non-elected official as part of their job. It's not in their job description, doesn't happen. Three, Zohran Mamdani and his wife are rich. They are more than capable of using their own private money to provide her with a private security company to make sure that she will be safe to go over to Syria and in Lebanon, and to go and visit all the families she wants to visit, and she would be protected, or as protected as is possible, according to the amount of money they want to spend. Zoran has the money for this. She has the money for this. They can do this. They wanted you to pay for it. They wanted to take it out of your pocket. And when the New York Police Department said, this is well and crazily outside of our job description, this is something that they should not be doing, and something that the federal government says they shouldn't be doing, only then does Zoran Mandani say, well, it's not my fault. It was my staff. We were just talking about it. It wasn't serious. This guy is such a liar. He is so horrible. And I did make a statement about it back on the 11th. I know I made a video about this, but this is part of the problem that we have right now in New York. And we're seeing this more and more. And Mandami is just the tip of the iceberg of the DSA progressive socialist ideologues that think that they can use government to be able to tap into your money and into your rights and to your privileges for their benefit, for their needs, their private, very selfish needs. This is something we have seen over and over again. And you could say, well, we see this from members of Congress, like from everyone from Nancy Pelosi over to Mitch McConnell. They all do it. Let's call them all out for it. In fact, I often do. And I'm not going to miss this opportunity to call this out, because this is now the DSA. We've seen this from Democrats. We've seen this from Republicans to varying degrees. But now we're seeing it from the DSA, a growing movement within the Democratic Party. And if we can nip it in the bud now, that is one more abuse that is not being proliferated and continued in our Congress. And at this moment, if Zoran Mandani is the example, and he is one of the examples, then look at the degree of abuse that they are willing to do to say, well, it's absolutely normal. This is okay. We can use the New York Police Department, your local police department, your tax dollars to give his wife a vacation. His wife was never elected. His wife isn't part of the government. His wife is just Zoran Mandami's responsibility, not yours. Her quality of life is his responsibility. He's the husband. He's part of that marriage. He's the significant other. It has nothing to do with taxpayer dollars or taxpayer servants. And we should not be endangering New York Police Department members in a war zone. They're not military. As much as the left would like to confuse and blur the line between police and military, it isn't a blur. It isn't indistinguishable. It is very exacting. Police are police. They're not military. There is no way to confuse the two. They're not in any way, shape, or form. But the left would like you to think, oh, they're the same thing. The NYPD, they're the same thing as military. They can go over to any military conflict in the world, and they can protect my wife just like the United States Army can do. No, they can't, and they won't, and they shouldn't. Neither of them. This is ridiculous. And we really need to point this out, because this is what we are seeing, the excess, the obvious and blatant abuses that are being done by members of the DSA and the socialists of just abusing your money on a regular basis over and over again. And it's just very annoying to me. In fact, it's not just annoying to me. It's annoying to people like Bill Maher. Bill Maher is pissed off because the left has gone so far left that they even went further left than Bill Maher did. They're abusing things so much that even Bill Maher is speaking out more and more. Now, let's be very clear. I don't think Bill Maher is a good guy. I do not agree with Bill Maher's politics at all. I think that Bill Maher is an opportunist. He was more than happy to sing the praises of Joe Biden when Joe Biden was being accused of sexually assaulting women. And Bill Maher, literally May 20th, 2020, came out and said, Well, just suck it up. Don't worry. It doesn't matter if he actually did it or not. You have to elect Joe Biden, even if he made a sexual assault against women, because he's not Orange Man bad. Literally, he said that. I believe it was 2019, when Bill Maher came out and he told the American people that he would like to see a recession so that Donald Trump would lose the next election. He wanted a recession that he knew would negatively impact millions of middle class and low income American citizens. Not him. He's rich. It wouldn't change his life at all. It wasn't going to make any impact on his ability to live, but it would hurt the middle class and it would hurt the poor, and therefore they would vote blue. It didn't matter who, because he doesn't like Orange Man bad, or at least he didn't back then, and the left kept moving left, and they forgot Bill Maher. They left Bill Maher behind because they decided to be more like Zoran Mandami, and they're moving closer to Zoran Mandami and Abdul El Sayed and Daraliza Chevalier. They're going to be socialist and communist. That's how far they are. They're on the edge of becoming that, and they left people like Bill Maher behind. And Bill Maher is now coming out and going, hey, wait a minute, we've gone too far. You would think that he's a conservative. You would think he, like John Fetterman, who stopped moving left. Not that they aren't leftist, they just stopped continuing to move left, and now they are being accused of being on the right, that they're MAGA or MAGA adjacent, that they're somehow un-American, unpatriotic, that they are evil and bad men just because they don't agree with these socialist policies, because they don't believe in the way the socialists are abusing America. Here's something. This is what Bill Maher said this weekend about illegal aliens. And I think it's kind of interesting because it's something I've been saying about illegal aliens for, 2 decades. But Bill Maher finally caught up.
And finally, new rule, if you want the American dream, you have to take the American values.
Well, there's a statement. If you want the American dream, you have to take American values. Good. Of course. Because you're coming to America. We need to end this silly idea that you come to American as a hyphen. You are not Irish American. You're not Italian American. You're not Somali American. You're not Pakistani American. You are American, period, full stop, done. That's it. You're American, full stop, done. And if you cannot accept being an American, get out the country. People go, but Mike, they don't have to leave. Yes, they do have to leave. And we should start saying this. And let's not be embarrassed by being exclusionary. That we say, hey, you know what? We want the best people. We want people who want to be Americans. And if you don't want to be an American in America, get out my country. And let's not be embarrassed about saying that, because there's nothing wrong with saying that America should only be for American citizens and people who want to be American citizens. Because when we don't do that, look at what we have been getting. People who are abusing the system. The Somali daycare fraud in Minnesota under Tim Walz is only one example of it, and a very big example. But there are many of these kinds of schemes and scams, and we're seeing these pockets where people are in America, but they're not American. They're just there to use the resources of America, not there to actually be part of the resources of America to the benefit of everyone. They're exclusionary to America. Even though they're in our soil, they're taking our resources, they're taking your money, and now they want more to come in. This is an invasion. This is how you invade quietly. This isn't the let's break down the front gate and invade the city. This is drips and drabs, slow and steady. It is an invasion. Get enough people change enough laws, you have control. It's just a matter of time. It happens over time. It's the slow and far more peaceful way of doing it than breaking down the gate, but it winds up with the same result either way. One just takes a little bit longer. What else did Bill Maher have to say? So if you want to come to America, you must have American values. Is that such a crazy thing? And people on the left are losing their minds about this. They can't imagine that Bill Maher, who's supposed to be a leftist, and he is saying you have to have American values. That to be an immigrant coming to America, you must share our values, that you must respect our values, which would also mean respect our laws. And they're like, oh my God, how could Bill Maher say this? Well, let's go on.
There's no bigger issue in electoral politics these days than immigration, and there's no doubt, at least in my mind, that both sides went to extremes. Biden's policy of open doors, and then Trump's policy of broken windows.
Of course, he had to make a joke about he still doesn't like Donald Trump. Fair enough. That's his right as an American citizen. And of course, he's going to point towards ICE doing their job, which is to remove illegal aliens and also to remove threats to other ICE agents. And so he's going to make it be, oh, see, but they're so super violent. What about the violence that we have seen from the left? What about the violence we have seen from illegal aliens that have come into America and killed American citizens? The many, many cases of illegal aliens that have either through drunk driving or straight up violence killed American citizens. And the inconvenience is that ICE doing their job is enforcing the law. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show. Enforcing the law. You may not like that ICE has the power and the right to break a window, to detain an individual, to arrest an individual who is breaking the United States law. And part of that means that some of these individuals will be deported, as is the law. You don't have to like it. That's their job. Bill Maher doesn't like it. Who cares? It's not wrong. You don't have to like it. In fact, if you really, really don't like it, change the law. Democrats have had many opportunities not to exclude, but to include the 2010 supermajority of Barack Obama. Super majority. Democrats could have passed any law they wanted to. They had the numbers. They had the House, the Senate, and Barack Obama, who is a very progressive Democrat. They could have changed any law they wanted to. If they wanted to improve the immigration laws, they could have done it in a heartbeat. They had until late 2011. They could have changed it anytime they wanted. They didn't. They could have codified Roe v. Wade for the last 50 years. They didn't. Why? Because they don't care. They just don't care. They'll say things like this with Bill Maher trying to be all kinds of smug and trying to, make sure just don't vote blue. Yeah, he's going to be upset with the blue. He's going to tell you that socialists have a problem. There's a problem, which is a Democrat problem in America right now, but you still can't vote for the right. He's still going to try and convince you, but you still got to vote blue. Just like he said with Joe Biden. Yeah, he may have done a sexual assault against a woman, but you still have to vote for him. Why? Because he's a Democrat, which is so duplicitous. This is such snake oil work. Watch this.
Now, I'm on the page of America doing what it used to do so well, stealing hard-working, talented immigrants from around.
Stealing? America's never had to steal immigrants. We are the destination in the world for every immigrant in the world. I love this. America steals. We're stealing. No, we're not. We have so many immigrants trying to come into America of every skill level, of every type of skill and expertise, that we are trying to throw some of them back to their home countries. We have that many. There isn't a dearth of people trying to break through the door. We've got a line of 2 million legal migrants, legal being the key and operative word, 2 million people long trying to come into this country. No other country on the face of the earth has that. We have 50, many estimates will say, depending on which estimate you want to look at, somewhere between 30 to 50, and I'd say it's closer to 50 million illegal aliens in America at this moment. Even if you want to go by the lower estimate of 30 million in this country on any given year, except for the second term of Donald Trump, which surprisingly has virtually eliminated illegal aliens coming into America. Yeah, we closed the border effectively. Something that we were told couldn't be done has been done. But every other, under other presidents, we have seen at least 500,000 illegal aliens trying to enter into the United States every single year since my birth, since the day I was born. About 500,000 a year on average, trying to come into America. And he wants to say, oh, we're stealing. We don't need to steal anybody. They're coming whether we want them to or not. We're not going over and saying, oh, well, we need some more doctors. They're on the line already. They're already trying to cross the border. And he knows this. But he wants you to think America's bad. America's bad. That's because of Republicans. They slavery, Republicans, they're bad. By the way, who pushed slavery in America? Those were Democrats. Who pushed Jim Crow laws? Those were Democrats, not Republicans. So please, Bill Maher, stop trying to be petty and stop trying to convince people to vote blue no matter who. It matters who, and it matters why. And you're about to tell everyone that. So stop trying to blow smoke up their ass. Let's see.
Around the world and making them Americans. But
yeah, again, we don't have to steal people. They come. We don't have to steal them. They willingly are coming here because there's nowhere else to go. No one else is better. Nowhere else has more opportunity. Period. Go on. Go on, Bill. Distort this a little bit more.
But something has changed in the equation. Now, most immigrants still want to assimilate, but
I don't know that it's most. I think you might be wrong there, Bill, because I'm looking at communities across America that are very hyper isolated, very xenophobic in America. I don't think it's most anymore. Used to be. I'm not sure that it still is, but go on.
some now have this other attitude of melting pot. Fuck you, you melt. Look, you don't have to love everything about America. We don't. That's why Yelp was invented.
Ha ha, funny joke, but he's right. In America, we don't have to agree on everything. We're not, even with Donald Trump, we're not in a dictatorship. There is no authoritarian control over the American people. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but there are some people who don't want to be part of that system. They want the control. They want the authoritarian rule. They want it to be their authoritarian rule, their traditions imposed on everyone else. And that's not American, and that's a problem. Well, of course they are.
But, you know, if you do get past ICE, America's actually pretty cool. We say you...
Well, the only reason why you wouldn't get past ICE is you're here illegally, you're a criminal. And you shouldn't be here. And you shouldn't get past ICE because you're a criminal. And, you know, again, he wants to make a joke of that and he wants to blow past that. But we don't have a nation if we don't have rules, if we don't have laws, and they're not enforced. And because we're finally enforcing the laws, that no one else has been enforcing, everyone goes, it's oppression. It's like a kid who's been allowed to go in and eat cookies out of the cookie jar every single day, and an adult finally shows up and takes away the cookie jar and says, no, you can't eat cookies all day, every day. You just can't. Oh, the kid is going to have a fit, throw a tantrum, be upset, because how dare you enforce the rules that are good for the kid? But the adult doesn't go, oh my God, the kid's having a tantrum, I got to give him back the cookies. The answer is no, you still don't get the cookies. This should be simple and obvious. And for most of my life, it was simple and obvious. But, you know, you've got Harvard and Yale and Columbia and Cornell, Binghamton University that are all trying to teach kids that no. The answer is give the kids back the cookie jar. And that's just so unhealthy. But go on, Bill. Lie to us some more.
Do you eat the food your grandma cooked? Speak another language at home? Celebrate religious holidays?
Which people have done forever in America. No one has ever stopped them. No one has ever tried. No one cares. You have whatever religion you want. No one cares. You eat whatever food you want. No one cares. You can believe whatever you want. There is no impediment on that in America. No one has forced you, and there is no law that forces you to live like me or anyone else in America. There is no law. But they're trying to make them. But we are seeing some places like Dearborn, Michigan, where they are trying to create that. Islamburg, New York is another place where they're trying to force you to live their lifestyle. And that's a problem. But go on, Bill. Go on, Bill Maher.
We welcome your food, your art, your fashion, your first ladies.
He thought that was really funny. It's not. But, you know, it amused him for a moment. So good for you, Bill. Go on.
But you have to answer one question. Do you like Western civilization?
This is an excellent question that he asks. Because Western civilization is America. America is the end result. America is the fruit of the labor of Western civilization. We are the pinnacle, the end result, the proof of the experiment of Western civilization. There is no one else who does it better than us. No one who exemplifies the positives more than the United States. Again, not to say that we have a perfect country, not to say that we haven't gotten anything ever wrong, and definitely not to say that people like Donald Trump are dragging down America, nor that Barack Obama was emphasizing Western culture. He wasn't. The fact is, net, when you add it all up, there is no better example of Western civilization and its benefits to humanity than America. And Bill Maher knows it.
Because that's what we are, and that's not negotiable. Let me ask our audience, do you think gay rights is one of our values that's non-negotiable?
Kinda. Oh my God, he had Andrew Cuomo with him.
Great, I'm going to hold you to it. A few weeks ago, a liberal Democrat named Melissa Chaudhry, running for Congress in Seattle, was asked why, among the many progressive causes listed on her website, LGBT rights was conspicuously absent. Because she...
Well, first of all, LGBT rights doesn't have to be on any candidate's resume, or their policies. Mind you, there's a lot of candidates who are running for elected office right now that don't have any policies. They don't have anything. They're not offering anything. One example I would point out is a guy named Bruce Blakeman here in New York who's running for governor of New York. He's a Republican. He has no policies. I can't support him. I don't support him. And I'm a Republican. a very outspoken Republican at that. Bruce Blakeman, you go to his website right now. For over 9 months that he's been running for governor, he has yet to figure out a single policy. He has promises. He has a lot of promises. He doesn't have a single policy. So, no, you don't have to have a policy for everything. And I'm not upset that any one candidate does. You don't have an LGBT policy. That's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to have a flat earth policy either. You know, you don't need a policy for everything, but you should have policies for some things. And the problem is we now have this extreme in America where we either have people like Bruce Blakeman who have no policy whatsoever, and they're running simply on the left is bad, which is stupid. Or you have people who say, I've got a policy for everything. I'm going to micromanage your life, like Zoran Mandami, when he says that there is no problem that is too big or too small for government to take care of. Government cradle to grave. And that is also wrong. The left is expecting that this candidate is supposed to have a policy for everything, for every single issue, concern, and worry that the left may have, and they all have to match up with leftist ideology. She has to prove that she's completely on the plantation at every moment, all day long. And that's just as bad as people who have no clue whatsoever about what they're doing, like Bruce Blakeman, who's out there and he has no idea. He has no plan. He has no intention to win. And my biggest fear is that Blakeman will win, not because I support Kathy Hochul. Kathy Hochul is a horrible governor. She has done a miserable job. The fact that she's begging people in Florida to come back to New York to pay taxes in New York, that's the only reason why she wants them back. She wants their money so she can tax them so that she can give it to her special interest buddies, and corruption is rampant. I would never want Kathy Hochul to win, but I can't point to Bruce Blakeman and have him win, which is, of course, why I support Larry Sharpe, who's a libertarian, who I agree with most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, with most of his policy, because he at least has policies. There's at least some of his policies I agree with. There are policies that I can work with and say, okay, this one, not quite perfect, but we can work on that. Let's negotiate. We can do that. I got Bruce Blakeman. I got nothing. He goes, oh, I'm going to cut taxes. How? You're just the governor. How are you going to convince the New York Senate, the New York Assembly to actually agree with you? How are you going to get them to pass a budget that's going to cut taxes when they have never wanted to do that? And in fact, all they try to do is increase taxes because we need the money. How are you going to cut spending? Bruce Blakeman goes, I'm going to cut spending day one. How? And in particular, on what? What are you going to cut funding on? What is it you're going to cut? Because I guarantee you, if you try and touch education, Democrats are going to flip the hell out. You try and touch healthcare, Democrats are going to flip the hell out. And there's going to be a bunch of independents along with them. So how are you going to do this? It's important because it determines whether or not it's actually going to happen. And that's the difference between having a good politician who's trying to help people and somebody who's just getting a cushy job for 4 years and make a bunch of money and say, goodbye, thank you. That's it. There's your difference. But Bill Maher, go on, Bill Maher, go on.
He said, a lot of Muslims do not feel that way, unfortunately.
Muslims don't have to agree with LGB. They don't have to. Any American doesn't have to, regardless of what their religion is. There are a bunch of people who are Christians that don't agree with the LGB community. There are a bunch of Jewish people who don't agree with the LGB community. That's fine. The difference is, at least in the modern age, right now in America, the Christians and Jews aren't trying to kill the LGB. Again, as we were talking about earlier, if you're looking at Muslims, especially fanatical Muslims, they believe in taking LGBT individuals and throwing them off buildings. That's a problem. If you don't have a policy because you don't want to admit that you want to throw people off of a building, that is your solution, that is a problem, especially in America. And when someone asks you that, we need to be able to find out the answer. So again, Melissa Chaudhry, she says,
now here's where liberal sphincters just tightened because they heard the word Muslim and have been brainwashed into thinking, oh, some Islamophobic bullshit is coming now. No, just facts.
yes, she said it. And again, she could have been Christian and said it. She could have been Jewish and said it. She could have been no faith whatsoever, an atheist, and said the same thing. That's not something that she has a concern with. That's not one of her priorities. Maybe she's more worried about water. Maybe she's more worried about feeding people or health care. Maybe she wants a strong military. I don't know. But the fact that you have to fill out the check boxes, especially on the left, there is some of that on the right as well, but on the left, it's checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. That's dangerous. That's authoritarian. That's a problem. And Bill Maher sees it.
And a little honesty to the people who see everything as oppressor versus oppressed, but can't see who actually does a lot of oppressing. So let me ask, is this the progressive policy now? Is Ms. Chaudhry right? We throw gay people under the bus?
Or off the building. He says under the bus. No, they throw them off the building. They don't throw them under a bus. But go on, Bill.
Anytime it clashes with what makes Muslims uncomfortable?
Well, yeah. Well, see, that's the problem. It is a direct result of equity. Because the left believes in equity, not equality. See, if we're equal, then we get the same opportunities. Not the same outcomes, but the same opportunities. We get to have the same, we can walk into the same experience. What we do is our outcome. That's individual. That's up to you and me. We both can go to college. You may get a PhD. I might get a bachelor's. That's our choice. But we both got to go to college. You may go to Harvard. Someone else may go to a community college. That's your choice. You could go to a public college or a private college. That's your choice. But you went to college. So we had the opportunity being the same, but we made individual choices and we have different outcomes on that. And that is called freedom. That is a good thing. The left doesn't believe that. The left believes everyone walks in to the same location and they all walk out with the same education. No difference, no disparity, no disputes, no questions, no individuality. You're going to believe the same thing that your professor believed, that their professor believed. You're going to believe the same thing everyone in your class believes because there is no room for any other choice. And if you don't, then you are the problem because how dare you have a different point of view? That is indoctrination. That's our college. That's our education system right now. And Bill Maher is just noticing it. He's just noticing this. Bill Maher has been in political commentary. Yeah, he's a comedian. He's in political commentary. He's been doing this 30 years, 40, almost 40 years, over 30 years that he's been doing political commentary. As a comedian, which he's really not. I mean, yeah, occasional joke here or there. He's not. He's a political commentator, kind of like me. In fact, very much like me, except with a lot more jokes and a bigger staff and a huge salary. I don't get that. But Bill Maher gets it. He's no different. And he's finally seeing the same thing that most Americans have been seeing for a long time, especially those of us who are conservative, because we notice these things. Because these things happen when you stop enforcing laws, when you start putting feelings in the place of facts. And that's what we're seeing here. And part of this, and this whole thing, is in part because of Bill Maher and other progressives, other leftists, just like Bill Maher. They created this problem. Conservatives have been trying to fix the problem, and then the leftists complain about that. Bill Maher is taking pot shots at Donald Trump and his efforts to fix the problem of illegal immigration. Mind you, Bill Maher recognizes there's a problem with our immigration system. We're allowing people to come into our country. He forgets to mention illegally, that are coming into our country not to be Americans, but to use up the resources, to abuse America. He recognizes that. It took him decades to finally catch up to where we have been for decades, and he finally caught up with that. But he's still pissed off because the law says that ICE exists, that ICE mass deports these people, that Donald Trump promised the American people that he would do mass deportations, that Donald Trump has authorized that there are mass deportations, because there are mass deportations happening. Bill Maher's pissed at that, but he just realized, but the other alternative created the problem that Bill Maher now wants answered. Conservatives are doing the work of fixing the problem that the leftists like Bill Maher created in the first damn place. If Bill Maher was actually paying attention in the first place, if Bill Maher, like most leftists, was concerned about the consequences, then we wouldn't be in this problem now. You wouldn't need the right out there trying to fix everything, because it wouldn't have broken in the first place. I don't know. Maybe it's me. But I think it's interesting. And I love it that, when Bill Maher said this, and this is being quoted by several news agencies, now most immigrants want to assimilate. But some, and I love it, it's most immigrants. I love how they can't help themselves. Bill Maher and the whole left wing, they can't not mix legal migrants and illegal aliens. They count them as the same thing. Oh, they're just immigrants. No, they're not. One's a criminal, one is following the law. If they can't get something that basic, that simple, that consequential, if they can't get that right, how can we expect them to get anything right? And yet they want you to vote for all their people, no matter what. Vote blue no matter who. But by the way, they don't know the difference between legal and illegal immigration. You don't understand something that is absolutely fundamental to our country, and it is absolutely vital to understand, because it's destroying our country. And you want me to vote for people who don't understand the difference between law and crime? You want to vote for people who don't know the difference? It doesn't make sense. But this is what the left does. And that's how we get people who come into our country, who are in offices of power. A great example, and you probably haven't heard about this. And by the way, Judith, you're on Rumble. Thank you. You said it. You've been listening for a little while, and I appreciate and thank you for the compliment there. Thank you for that. I did notice. But we're looking at what is this? Maricua goes, he uses Bill Maher as a barometer of the left. He isn't. Bill Maher is an abnormality. Bill Maher is behind. He was left by the left. The left has gone so far, they're going so into the progressive socialists, that Bill Maher is now almost a centrist. That's how far left America has gone. This is how far left people like Zoran Mandami and AOC and Vermont, Bernie Sanders. They're dragging America so far left that Bill Maher is a centrist because everything has gone so far left. That's why, by comparison, I'm an extreme person on the right compared to Bill Maher, only because they're going so far left so fast. There is almost everyone else is somewhere closer to the center, if not to the right, than actually being towards the left. That's just a reality. But thank you for pointing out that thought, Americola. Look, here's one of the problems that we see. The left is so out of their mind, and they cannot see the difference of law and criminality, that we just saw. There is a Massachusetts mayor who was charged, this is August 14th, this Friday, with pandemic. They stole money from the American people during the pandemic and the lockdowns. It was money laundering during the pandemic and the lockdowns. Of all the times that you could steal money from the American people, and I mean, we have examples of that. The Somali daycares have been stealing money from American citizens since about 2017. But this guy, he actually started stealing money when America was in one of the worst moments of desperation that we have seen in our history. When the world was panicking, he decided to take advantage. This is as bad as many of the money lenders, and we're talking about like Switzerland, where the bankers were taking gold deposits from the Germans, knowing full well that this was gold that was taken from dead people. And they let them do it. And this guy is doing the same equivalent. This guy, whose name is Brian DePena, he's 61 years old. He is the mayor of Lawrence, Massachusetts, and he is the same as a grave robbing Nazi, in my opinion. You may disagree. I believe that he is the same thing as a grave robbing Nazi. That when America and the world were suffering from the pandemic and, more importantly, the lockdowns, but especially the pandemic, when people were not being allowed to work unless they got an experimental drug mandated by Democrats, this Democrat decided that he was going to steal money that people needed to survive, for their business to survive. He took their money because he was greedy. According to the charges from the federal government, this is from the U.S. Attorney's Office, the District of Massachusetts, that DePena is charged with one count of wire fraud. I'm going to make this bigger for you guys so you can see it, and you'll see the link as well. That DePena is charged with one count of wire fraud and one count of money laundering from his time, his currently existing time, as mayor of Lawrence, Massachusetts. He stole over $1.5 million in COVID small business loans. Over $800,000 was used to pay off mortgages for him. This is the ultimate in greed, in selfishness. This is someone, and by the way, if you're wondering, DePena, he's from another country. He doesn't even speak English. He's been in America since 1989. He's from the Dominican Republic. And by the way, this article, in case you're wondering, this is coming from GBH. This is WGBH.org. This is it's like PBS, one of their organizations. And in their article about DePena, he is from the Dominican Republic. He moved to Lawrence. He is a foreigner who was elected mayor in England because DEI. He was elected, and he doesn't speak English, or at least he says he doesn't speak English. I don't know how you can be in America since 1989 and to be in elected office And the town, by the way, is 83% Hispanic. 83% of the city of Lawrence, which is over in Massachusetts, near Boston, 83% of the people are Spanish speaking or Hispanic. That's fine, but it's still America. They still speak English. It isn't a colony of Spain. It's not a colony of the Dominican Republic or Cuba or Puerto Rico. He speaks Spanish for decades, 3 decades. And this guy, who's a foreigner, who was elected, steals money from the American people. He's married. He's got 7 kids. He's got 5 grandkids. The kids and the grandkids, American citizens, born on American soil. And this guy stole from you at the time of some of the greatest need since the Great Depression. And he's being defended by the left. The left will tell you it's because Donald Trump is a racist. This guy stole from you and me, and it's documented. And the problem is, well, you're just being a racist. He was hired because of DEI. He can't speak English. How's he supposed to do his job? If he can't speak English, if he can't read English, apparently, according to his attorneys, then how can he do his job? Now, you may think, Mike, you are making that up. That isn't real. That's not true. Okay, this, yes, it's from the libs of TikTok. This is a video of Brian de Pena. This is after he was arrested by the federal government. He's walking out of the from the charges. This seems to be his lawyer, or at least his spokesperson, and he's walking, and the media are asking him questions about why he embezzled, he stole money from the people at the time that the people needed it the most, when they were at their low. And here's what he says. I want you to listen to this carefully.
Hi, guys.
Do you have any comment to the city?
Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Hi, guys.
How are you,
No
Mr.
comment.
Mayor?
Excuse me. I'm fine.
Excuse me, guys. What's your comment, sir?
Just relax. God bless you. God bless you.
Relax. You don't
God bless you.
We're not. We're just.
God bless you.
Sure. Do you think they?
Do you want to say anything?
Did you hear that? Did you just hear that? That was at the 17th second. That was the 17th second in this little clip. This is his spokesperson. This is the mayor. And the mayor he's responding to every one of these newscasters, these journalists. They're there. They're asking questions. He's got the microphone in front of him. He is responding to them. He understands what they are saying because he's been in America since 1989. And guess what? Americans tend to speak English, something that we should expect from everyone coming into America. This guy has been here for 30 years. He speaks English. Even by accident, he knows English. He knows what these, and this is not the first time that he has had news organizations around him asking him questions in English. And this guy just said, in the 17th second, he goes, he doesn't speak English. How? How is that possible? How can we allow that to happen? Let me play that again. I'm going to go back to, okay, let's go back to the 10th second. All right, we're at about 9 seconds. Again, the bald-headed guy, that's Pena.
Just relax.
Thank you. God bless you. God bless you.
Just relax. You don't
God bless you.
We're not. We're just.
See, who is this guy? This is a spokesman for the city of Lawrenceville, supposedly translating for, and by the way, if he's not even trying to translate any of the questions, he's just trying to deflect. He's just trying to prevent the media from getting answers for the people to explain why did the mayor abuse these American citizens? Why did he do that? And here he goes.
God bless you.
Sure. Do you think they?
Do you want to say anything?
He doesn't speak English.
Nothing.
He doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak English. Then why is he responding to everyone? Why is he looking them directly in the face and choosing the words he's choosing, which otherwise he wouldn't know? Why isn't he responding in Spanish? Saying, hey, I just don't understand. Yo no sé. Yo no sé. Amigo, yo no sé. He could be saying that. He's not. He's speaking English. And yes, he has an accent, but he knows the words that he's saying. And he's saying them because he said them before. He's very practiced at this. This guy, this is so corrupt.
Are you innocent? No comment.
Thank you.
No, he's done
God
a great
bless
job
you.
in Lawrence. Thank you, guys.
God bless you.
What are you blessing us for?
God bless you.
You get your
Give me a second. Give me a
no?
second. Will we step down there?
No.
See that? That's your Democrats. This is where the leftist policies, the leftist trend, this is where it leads. They want more and more illegal aliens. They want more and more foreigners in America. They want more and more people abusing America, like this guy. So that when Americans are in need, especially desperate need, he can take their money. He can take your money. This is your tax money he stole. And he can now turn around and go, but I don't speak the language. Then why are you in my country? I don't speak the language. Oh, how could I have possibly known? Then you should never have run for elected office. You should have never been elected to office. You can't do the job. You're not trustworthy. But the left went, but he's Hispanic, so we have to vote for him. We have to. Otherwise, you're racist. It's racist not to vote for a guy who doesn't speak our language, doesn't believe our system of government, doesn't believe in doing things the American way, a guy who's going to rip you off. Yeah, but you have to elect him because otherwise you might be called racist by other Democrats, and you'll never once stop to say, but does he deserve to be elected? Because he doesn't. This guy should never have been elected. He only got elected because he was in Massachusetts, a bluer than blue state. He's a Democrat, and the Democrats are going, well, he's voting. We got to vote blue no matter who, even if the guy doesn't speak our language, even if he doesn't share our culture, even if he doesn't believe in the election, the laws of the United States. We have to vote this guy in because he's blue, and you vote blue no matter who, even when they don't speak your language. This is embarrassing. This is insane. This is insulting. It reminds me of Abdul as-Sayed. People are looking at this. I'm going to tell you guys, I am absolutely confident that we are going to see Democrats lose the midterm elections, 2026. And to be fair, it's not because Republicans are so much better. We got a ton of problems. Republicans have a lot of bad candidates. I told you, Bruce Blakeman, he's a terrible candidate for win. But we have a lot of candidates like Bruce Blakeman right now running across the country, not just in New York, but across the country. And they shouldn't win, but they are winning. And the reason why is because the left has gone so far left, they forgot people like Bill Maher. They have gone so far left that they are hyper socialists. Even AOC is now trying to back off the train and go, well, I'm not a national Democratic Socialist. I'm a New York City Democratic Socialist, as if there's a difference between the two. In her mind, and according to the Democratic Socialists, there's a difference. You know what the difference is? The national says we have to destroy America. We have to destroy the Constitution, the Senate. We got to destroy the Supreme Court. And AOC won't say that because that's not going to win. And she knows it. So she's more moderate. Oh, no, I don't want to destroy the Senate. I don't want to destroy the Supreme Court. No. I just want control of them. But I don't want to destroy them. That's what she can't win any other way. But I think you're going to see Republicans win. Because what do the Democrats stand for right now? They stand for people like DePena, who will steal your money when you are in desperate need during a crisis, an international global crisis, and they will steal the money out of your pocket. That was a Democrat that did that. Democrats were the ones who created the Jim Crow laws. They will do that and steal money out of your pocket. Democrats are the ones who are fighting tooth and nail to give rewards to illegal aliens, not to you, to illegal aliens. They want to give them hotels and money, housing, not the homeless, not the poor, the illegal aliens. They want to reward the criminals, not you. This guy, El Sayed, is going to lose the Michigan Senate race. Not because the Republican is so much better. Tiffany, it's Tom Tiffany. He's not that great a candidate. The difference between the two is El Sayed is a lunatic. He's a Democratic Socialist lunatic. And now he is trying to lie to your face. He's like, oh, all the things that I have been believing for the last decade, none of that's true. None of that's real. I don't want, now all of a sudden, El Sayed is changing his answers and saying, no, I'm a moderate. He's not moderate. Bill Maher, that's like saying that El Sayed is the same thing as Bill Maher. And Bill Maher isn't a moderate, but they say he is. He's not. Again, they've gone so far left that Bill Maher is the center. And that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. El Sayed is one of the more extreme lunatics. He's like Hong, the woman who was running for governor of Wisconsin, who wanted to destroy and get rid of Thanksgiving and Christmas, who wanted to also destroy the Constitution, the Senate. These are things that El Sayed believes in. They want to destroy the things that make America free, the things that make America a nation where over several million people a year want to come and become part of. And he wants to destroy it all. And he wants you to become like him, to have his same religion, that women will not be able to read. Where if women, they poison in much of the Middle East, in Iran in particular, and Afghanistan as well, they poison schoolgirls. That's a fact. It's been documented, internationally proven that Iran, Afghanistan, they poison schoolgirls to prevent them from learning to read. They beat down women. They literally stone women to death for working. And El Sayed believes in this stuff. He believes in destroying the Constitution. He believes in destroying the Supreme Court. He believes in having a dictatorship controlled by the DSA over your life. You know who supports him? Zoran Mandami. The DSA. Bernie Sanders. Because they care about power. They don't care about you. I'm very troubled by this. And now, right now, depending on which poll, there's two polls that are out. One poll says that it's Mike Rogers is the Republican running in the race. And Mike Rogers is looking to win 51-47. That's one poll. There's another poll. It's the exact opposite. Literally, they have the numbers flipped. That El Sayed has 51% and Mike Rogers, the Republican, has 47%. So we got two polls. They're saying that they're 6 points out, the difference. But the tendency, the trend, the betting pool, everyone is saying El Sayed's going to lose because he's a radical lunatic, which is the DSA. And I just don't understand. Look, folks, we can do the math right now. I know a lot of the left are telling me, oh, no. The left, it's going to be all the excitement is with the Democrats and they're very excited in the DSA. Here's the reality. Right now, if you were to take a snapshot right this second, 49, looking at the Republicans, they're going to have 49 seats. It is almost virtually guaranteed. There's a 90% chance that Republicans on election day will have 49 Senate seats guaranteed. No matter what else happens, they'll have 49 right then and there. To have the majority, they need 2 seats. Just 2. Of the seats, there are 4 seats for Senate that are open and in question in 2026 in the midterms. Only 4 for the Senate. And all of those 4 seats lean Republican. All of them. We now have Michigan, which is with El Sayed, and we now know that El Sayed is unappealing even to Democrats. So, and we know this because when Democrats had the choice between El Sayed and anyone else, what did you see? They went up and down and they said to themselves, they didn't want him. He barely won. The American people don't want socialism. They don't want the DSA. They reject it. And the more that we learn about each and every one of these people, even people like John Fetterman, who's a leftist, people like Bill Maher, who's a leftist, we keep getting them telling us over and over and over again. James Carville, an extreme leftist, are coming out over and over telling us this isn't going to happen. They are leaving the Democratic Party. They are running away from this. They are saying this is a problem for America. And you guys should listen. I know the average person is not paying attention to this stuff. Look, it's a good sign. You should be ecstatic right now that at the worst case, Democrats just need 2 out of 3 absolutely red states, and they will have control of the Senate, which will protect America. We have almost no way to lose this. But, maybe it's me because the Democrats have their own plan. Their secret plan, their way of winning is they're going to say, we're going to change the Supreme Court. You thought it was just the DSA? It's the Democratic Party. This is Hakeem Jeffries, who is a progressive. I'll give you that. He is a progressive. He is a Democrat. In fact, he is the senior in the House of Representatives. He is the senior member of the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries. He's from New York. He is a representative, a progressive, and he wants to get rid of the Supreme Court as we know it. He wants to add 4 more Supreme Court justices. By the way, this has been tried for decades, not for years, for decades. Democrats have been at various times been trying to add more Supreme Court justices. And every time this question has been asked of the American people have said no. Roughly about 70% of Americans do not want to change the Supreme Court. They don't want to reduce the number of years that they serve. They don't want to add a number of members. They don't want to change anything about the Supreme Court. But the DSA does. This is why they're going to lose. This is why the DSA is going to lose. Because they want to destroy America. And they're looking for every single loophole, every little thing they can attack to be able to destroy America. And as American citizens point this out, and this is the best thing that you, as my audience, can do, is show people and say, look at this. The DSA, they're trying to destroy America. They don't believe in they don't believe in America. They don't believe in freedom. They believe in authoritarianism. They believe in dictatorships. They believe that you have to change your life to fit their feelings 24/7 all the time. Zora Mandami is just one example of it. El Sayed is another example of it. Chevalier, Daraliza Chevalier, is yet another example of that. Ilan Omar is another example of that. We have many examples, and in every single one of these examples, we see the same thing. They hate America. They want to destroy America. They want power. They don't want to be an American. They don't want to be you. They don't want to have you live your life. They want to control how you live. And that terrifies me. That really, absolutely, totally terrifies me. This is coming from the Wall Street Journal, talking about how they absolutely want to reduce the term of the Supreme Court justice, which would make it political. Supreme Court justices would become even more political to be when we go through the process of confirming a Supreme Court justice. You may think it's very political now. If they are being replaced every 18 years, that means we're going to have a general election. It's going to be just like getting a new senator in. It is going to be hyper political. It is going to be hyper partisan. And that's going to be a problem. And they also want to add in 4 more justices so that Democrats can stack the deck and just add in more and more and more, because they can't win unless they cheat. And they're more than willing to cheat. And they're going to cheat as hard as they can. This is really sad. This is really sad. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's all me and I'm just misunderstanding this stuff. And I don't know. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. You guys can tell me. I don't think I am. I am watching this. I am listening to people. I am listening to pundits on the left and on the right across America consistently say they do not agree with the DSA. They do not agree with this constant march to the left. And we are finally starting to see people like your Bill Mahers of the world who are trying to stop. And they're saying it's gone too far. People like John Fetterman are going, you know what? I can't live with that. People like James Carville are just going, I can't live with this. This is too much. This destroys America. This destroys my dream. No one can survive this. This won't be just another country, not America, not a great country, just another country. If we keep going down this path, this will break us. It will fail us. I don't know. That scares me. Everyone always likes to say, well, the next election is going to be the most important election of your lifetime. You know, it's going to decide everything. Everything changes with this next election. Generally speaking, that's not true. That's not real. That's not what happens. But in a lot of ways, in this election, it is true. We're going to set the path. The consequences of this next election sets the path for the next probably 10, possibly 20 years. 10, possibly 20 years. We're going to have a generation based on this next election. And if we see that the Democrats under the DSA, under the control of the DSA, the socialists and the communists, and if we see them take power, I'm glad that I'm closer to being dead than to be young and alive. It's going to destroy America. Destroy America. That is my very strong belief. All right. I know everybody was paying attention for a while there. I was going to talk about by the way, if you think I was overestimating this, I'm like, oh my God, but America loves the left. They love these politicians, these leftists. In case you thought I'm exaggerating that, here's a story coming out of Florida. This is by Reuters, that they're canceling rallies with Rashida Tlaib. It's not something I'm making up. America is lashing back. And if we're seeing this much reaction, this pushback, we've gone too far. It's just, we've gone too far. And we need someone to step up. And it's going to feel oppressive. I don't think enough people, again, I want to go back to what I was talking about earlier. To the left, it feels oppressive because it's just someone doing their job for the first time. These people have never had someone enforce the rules to actually level the playing field. They've never experienced that before. So they think it's unfair. They think it's cruel and unusual. It's the norm. They're just not old enough to have had that experience. They've never seen it before. And that's the problem. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. All right. You know what? It's the middle of the summer. I'm tired. I'm tired because my dog was sick. And I got to take him tomorrow, first thing in the morning, to go to the vet. So please, like, share, subscribe, because I got to take my dog to the vet. I got to pay for that. It's expensive. The vet is very, very expensive. And a 16-year-old dog is not cheap. So, yeah, please help me out. Subscribe. Just subscribe. Costs you nothing. Of course, if you do want to spend, you can spend $1.50. No, not $150, not $15, $1.50 a month and join the Patreon. That's all it costs, $1.50. And we're trying to add some more content and stuff over on Patreon, but it just helps to add up and pay the bills. It does make a difference. $1.50 a month. You can't get any streaming service, even part-time, for $1.50. And yet, I give you dozens of hours of content per week. Also, if you really want, you can also go over to PayPal and make a donation directly there if you want. Not required. But honestly, just hit subscribe. We want to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. All right. I haven't taken a vacation in, God, over a year. I probably need that. But instead of taking a vacation, I'm going to do a shorter show today. We've been going for 3 hours now. And I'm just going to do a shorter show. I'm a little tired. I thank you guys. And by the way, I appreciate Hal, and I want to Judith and Americua and Phil. I love the comments. I love the questions. I love the interaction, folks. I really do. And even when we disagree, I appreciate that. Trying to keep me honest, trying to make sure I'm being clear in what I'm saying. It matters. It does. But that being said, yeah, I'm a little tired today. I want to thank you all. I appreciate each and every one of you. Honestly, I do. Because I've been doing this 20 years. And it's not because I'm getting rich. It's not because I've got, women all over the place or anything like that. I'm still just as single as I was 20 years ago. Here's the reason. It's because you guys make it worthwhile. I don't do this to try and be famous. I'm not trying to get super rich. I wouldn't mind making money, but I'm not trying to get super rich. I do this because you guys, your comments after the show, your live chat, your super chats, your Rumble rants. You guys make it all worthwhile. You really do. And that's why I do it for 20 years. That's why I'm so dedicated. That's why I've been doing this Sunday live stream for 9 years in a row. It's because of you guys. You guys are wonderful. And I thank you for that. All right. I need to take off. I will talk to you all again very soon. Remember, on Tuesday, I am taping at Lehman College at the Bronx Net Studios. Please reach out to me and let me know if you want to go and be live during the taping of the Radically Conservative Community TV program this Tuesday. And I have an upcoming event in September, at the end of September. I will give you more information about that. It's a speaking event that will be taking place in Brooklyn. I'll give you more details as we get closer into September to let you know about that. That'll be happening live. I love to do my speaking engagements. I love the Q&A, talking to people live. So we'll be talking more about that soon. But until the next time, folks, I thank you. I hope you have a great day. Be safe. By the way, if you're in New York or New York's region, it's about to start raining. So be dry. Be careful on the roads. I'll talk to you again real soon, folks.